I'm going to keep going. Well, I'm still thinking about it. I'm getting hoarse, as you can hear. Okay, after the cruise ships, I used to stay in that hotel, in a motel, when I worked on the cruise ships, and got very depressed there, and just about killed myself once there. I had my gun loaded, and I was going to shoot myself, and my friend West phoned me up and said, "You better not, Richard, because he wasn't religious, but he said, you know, you'll never go to heaven if there is one. If you kill yourself, take your own life." And I sort of straightened myself out, and I wrote a lot of good songs then. They were the songs, "No One in the Universe That Can Ever Compare to You," "Blue Side of Blue." I wrote a lot of nice songs there. Anyway, I was crying, and that's what booze does to you. Anyway, so after the cruise ships finished and everything, and I went to detox, and I don't know if that was the time I stayed for a month out in Maple Ridge, but I straightened out and quit drinking, and thought I got to straighten my life out. I didn't want to work on the cruise ships. I'd rather play the blues on a street corner than do that anymore. My career was going nowhere. So when I got out of the detox, I happened to run into my friend Bill Crompton, who had been involved in Holiday in Hollywood, and he'd always believed in me. He always told me I had the voice, you know. So did Andy, a commercial voice, you know, and for singing. That's why I was nominated on the Junos for Best New Male Vocalist. Anyway, I moved in with Bill in an apartment in Burnaby. It was a 2-bedroom apartment, and I had one room, he had the other. I went into that earlier about living there anyway, and I did a lot of recording in the bedroom. I made 150 tracks, or 130, I can't remember. All these background tracks for my singing and playing guitar with, but I never used them. I used to get up every morning, work for 2 or 3 hours, play all the piano parts, tap all the drum tracks out on the keyboard, put strings in, horns, everything. I did all kinds of great songs, you know, Shotgun, and I still got them on some kind of floppy disks upstairs. I went through that in another chapter, I remember, off on a side shoot, but I don't know, I just have to do things as I remember them. Anyway, I started playing with a band called the Chris Munday Band. They were doing Legions. Tom Cunningham was an agent then. He booked them. And I met him, and he booked me. He liked my Jerry Lee piano playing. And I shouldn't have never got into the Jerry Lee piano playing so much, even though I'm real good at it. It sort of took over my life for a while, and I ended up, you kind of lose your identity doing that. People wanted me to do Jerry Lee tributes and everything. I don't play just like him. Nobody plays like him, but I wrote a lot of songs back then, so my songwriting's different than that, but I did write one song that was called Rockin' My 88s. Anyway, that band had Bobby Regan, Chris Munday, Rick Enns, myself, and it was a really good band, pretty good band. They wanted to, Bill kind of pissed me off because, well, they ended up saying it was Chris Munday Band featuring Richard Stepp, but he wanted to take us to Europe, and she didn't have the talent. I said to Bill, "You're crazy, man." They were playing Legion. If you're going to take me to Europe, take me to Europe, not them. Anyway, during that time, I recorded some songs at a studio with Bill in the East End. I did Driving Down the Freeway. I did, Driving Down the Freeway. There's about 4 or 5 songs on the Crompton Sessions, they're called. And I did Hopes and Dreams. I don't know, I did 3 or 4 songs. Oh, The Hunter and Black is Black. Black and Black's a song by Los Bravos that Bill had something to do with. I don't know what, but he could never find the right guy to sing it, probably including me. But and then he took those songs over to Europe and said he was getting a deal together. I signed all my publishing over to him, and when he died, I went in his room and found the contracts, and I eventually got it all back. I put that in another part of my story way back when. I looked forever for that piece of paper I made him sign to get that damn contract back with all my songs, and then I finally got them back off of BDO, which was a company that took over his estate, because they came and got all his stuff. I grabbed all his gold records, and they're not real gold records, though they're phony gold records. But he painted them, put them in. But he did have big hits, that guy, Bill Crompton. He had House of Bamboo. I went into there was another chapter I went into all his hit records that he had. And so I lived with him for a while. And then he died. And I met a girl named Julia Chow during my travels there. She was beautiful looking, very slender and thin. And we started going out together. And then I used to swim every day up at the community center there. It's just full of people. I hated it up there. It was so busy. And I went out with Julia for a while. She was so weird and fussy. She would always, when she come to my place, she would always bring her own cutlery and everything. It's like, yucky, don't touch anything. Anyway, I went out with her for a while. That's when I lived in that place in Burnaby. Bill died when I was away. There was a lady came from Germany over to see me, Cornelia, her name was. And when I played over in Germany, I met her over there, but she'd come over later on to see me and stayed with me for a week at Bill's, at our apartment there. And we had a 2-bedroom apartment then. Anyway, I was playing the Legions and stuff with Chris Mundy's band. And then I got an offer to go. I started going to see Dr. Bano. He was a psychiatrist. And I told him all my stories and stuff. And then he gave me a bunch of pills. And then I didn't like the pills. Eventually I quit taking them. They never helped me, I got out of depression by exercising and getting my life straightened around a bit, not drinking, of course. And I did go back to drinking here and there, but I used to go see Dr. Banner. After he heard all my stories, all he ever wanted to talk to about is the music business. And so he finally retired, but I told you that story before too. But anyway, in the meantime, I got booked over to Sweden and Germany, and I didn't drink over there. I went over there with while I was staying at Bill's place. I flew over, landed in England, and then over to I think Frankfurt, and then up to Sweden, and I went to Stockholm and a place called Linköping, and I went there for I guess I was there for a month each, I think it was, to play the piano bars. And Linköping was really nice. I took a high-speed train out there, and then it was all free food. They have a big buffet every morning, like a lot of that Mucilex cereal and yogurts and boiled eggs and stuff like that. And then I'd have a dinner every day, and I played the little piano bar downstairs. And the people there, they used to ride their bicycles down and then take cabs home at night because of the drinking. They were strict on drinking. The drinks were, cripes, they were about $8.50 for a beer, Canadian, 15 or 16 Corona, I forget what it was, but or 40 or something. But it was about $8 or $10 for a beer. I wasn't drinking then, so probably if I would have been drinking, I would have had more fun because, I'm used to it now. But at the time, the people there smoked a lot, and they drank a lot too. But they always wanted to hear Elton John and Billy Joel, and I was more like a Jerry Lee, old-fashioned Southern piano style, and I thought they would love it over there, but they're not. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. And same, and I met one girl there. She was a blonde. Her and her girlfriend. I used to sort of see them. And then when I went down and I went swimming there a lot too in the pool. And I went around seeing a lot of the monuments and neat things. I went to a church there for Easter once where they have daffodils. Couldn't understand a word, but they had, I remember they had big slabs on the floor with the ministers or popes buried under there. It was a nice country, though. I liked it a lot. And then I went down to Stockholm, and I went all through the Gold Museum there, and I went through the palace buildings where the king and queen live, and the old town of Stockholm is really beautiful, all old brick buildings and rocks, and I did a lot of time around there walking around Stockholm. Because I didn't drink, I'd get up in the morning, go for long walks all over the place, and I remember that girl and her girlfriend came down and to visit me once at the piano bar, but I didn't drink, so I didn't know what to do with them. I'd take them upstairs. What am I going to do? If you don't drink, it's not so much fun. You can't get loose, And I felt nervous about it. I probably could have had a real good time if I would have been drinking. But they ended up getting drunk and picking up a couple of airline pilots or something and going off. So, but the Viking Gold Museum was something else. All these old Viking swords and everything, all this gold. I've got pictures of it somewhere. Anyway, when I came back from that, and I sent Dr. Bano some postcards and stuff like that, and then I went, after my trip to Germany, I met that Cornelia over there. She took me on a little trip around Germany and showed me some old churches and stuff. And Germany, I had to go there. I had all this equipment with me, my electric piano and everything. Same thing as the ships. And I landed in Frankfurt. Then I had to take a train down to this place called Walsut, where I was working. It's down near the Zurich border, right on the river, and the Rhine River. And so I got off and had a haul. I went to Zurich first, I guess, and then took the train. And then I had to haul all that stuff around. And he gave me a little apartment to stay in at this house. I called him Little Hitler. He was a real jerk. Anyway, and a bicycle I could ride. So I'd bicycle down to my gig. At night, everybody smoked heavy. The place was packed, though, but he watched his watch all the time, at every break. I felt like quitting that place, but I hung it in and went swimming in this pool down the road. They had an outdoor pool, but it was freezing cold. Nobody in it except for me. But I still kept my swimming going. And I met Cornelia there. That's where I met her. She was in the bar one night, and I don't know, some people were hassling me, and she sort of butted in and stuck up for me. She sort of knew some bikers or something. I don't know. She wasn't like a biker girl, though, but I started sleeping with her a little bit. They had fantastic desserts in Walsut, all these German bakeries, man. I used to buy them, and it was a really neat old town. It was like very old, And I used to bicycle 20 miles or so down the Rhine River on these bicycle paths where people had little huts where they had gardens, like community gardens. I think I went through all this before, but might as well tell it while I'm thinking about it. And I used to go up this mountain, walk the bike up, and then take ride it down. There was a little one-man church up there just for one person to go in, or two, go in and pray, but a beautiful view of the Black Forest. And there was it's a park like there, sort of old farms where they still run them like the old days and make their own cheese. And so anyway, I came back to Burnaby after that, and Bill died. Cornelia came over to stay with me for a week. She came from Germany after a while, and I lost my dad's war medals, by the way, after that somehow. I rebought some new ones, some new old ones to replace them, but I used to get people over to my apartment, same thing, partying, and then, you don't know what happens. Anyway, Cornelia came over to visit me and stayed at my place for a week with Bill, and that was okay. I forgot my train of thought, what I was going to tell you about her. Anyway, yeah, she went back to Germany finally and got married. Anyway, while she was over there, that's what I was going to say, we decided I was going to take her on a trip so we got a car, we went over to Victoria, or Nanaimo, I guess. And we drove up from Nanaimo and we got on the Queen of the North, the ship I used to play on for years. Every summer I played on the Queen of the North, from Port Hardy up to Prince Rupert. We'd go up there and one day come back the next, and I played piano on there. It finally sank, that ship, and I painted one of my pictures on that ship. Mark Hobson, that's the guy's name, the artist I've been trying to think of. Anyway, we went up there, got off, went into Prince Rupert, stayed overnight, and then we were driving across. We were going to drive across to Prince George, or from Prince Rupert over to, I guess it's Prince George, and then come back down as a round trip, and we got as far as Houston, and it was beautiful up there, nice mountains. I think it was Houston, around there somewhere, and they called at me and told me that Bill had died, because he'd had a heart attack about a couple of weeks before up at the SkyTrain. Bill used to get on the SkyTrain every night and go downtown and have dinner and everything. He liked going out in the nightclubs, and he liked to have dinner and all that. And he had diabetes, and so used to cook his peas for like 20 minutes. Anyway, he had a heart monitor when I went on a holiday with Cornelia, and he said that they said he'd be all right. I said, "You sure, Bill?" "Oh yeah, I'm going to be fine, yeah." So I went away, and then I called home, found out somebody called me. They were trying to get a hold of me that he died. So I had to rush back home with Cornelia and forget the rest of the trip. And she had to fly home because I had all this work to do, figure out what to do. I couldn't afford a 2-bedroom apartment, that's for sure. And so I went to started cleaning out the trustee. We tried to find Bill's relatives. We tried like crazy, couldn't find anybody. He had his bedroom locked. I think I broke the lock to get into it. And I took all my contracts out of there, grabbed everything I could that was worth anything, I thought. And Bill had I got a whole bag of all these sex things and videos and crap, and I took them all out, threw them in the dumpster so nobody would find them. He even wrote a porno book, and he wrote actually a Broadway musical too. He was a writer, so everybody's got their own little sex trip going, who knows. But anyway, I cleaned everything out. They took his car away, and I hauled all his trunk full of stuff over to this storage place and put it away, and then the trustee came, and they were trying to even take the furniture over. And I got Gordon Dowding to phone him up and tell him, "Hey, that furniture's half mine. You can't go taking my furniture away." And so anyway, I rescued what I could, and they come and took his nice little car away. He had a Camaro in really good shape and everything. Took it all away, and so then I had to move. So I moved in the same building down the hall to another single bedroom apartment, and that's where I started dating Julia, and I did a lot of recording there. I started transferring all my reel-to-reel tapes over to CDs. I bought a burner, and in real time too. God, it took forever. And I got rid of all my cruise ship clothes, and I don't know. Those days were pretty good. And I did a lot of work there, though. I did. Angela came out a couple times to visit me, and she had an apartment there. But I don't know. I could never quite get into going with her. But Julia, I thought, was real beautiful. And then I finally, Dr. Bano got me on a sort of like a disability thing, so that I didn't have to work quite as hard, but I still worked all the time. And I got onto free medical pills and stuff, which helped me a lot, because if he wouldn't have signed that form, man, I don't know what would have happened to me. And so then I finally went to BC Housing after Bill died, and because still having a hard time making ends meet, you know. And Jesse was going to move in with me once. He came in and stayed for a few days and then left. And I don't know if he ever paid me for I told him he got to pay rent, but he was so used to living at Dowding's, and he went back home. I'm glad he did anyway, because it was better for him. And so anyway, after that, I got to BC Housing, and they offered me a place in Burnaby. I went and looked at it, and it wasn't so great. In the meantime, I'd met Ed Sirney, who's still a friend of mine nowadays. He used to own a rock company in Vancouver. They did a lot of the rock work on the bridges around town, Alex Fraser Bridge and stuff like that. And he started coming down to the Best Western every night when I was playing there. And he'd have a drink and dinner and all this stuff, and we became friends, and then we ended up going to Nashville together, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. And he helped me to move to Coon Towers, and I went out there. It was a one-bedroom place. It was like a little place, had hot water heating, which was good. I was on 15th floor, 1511, and it was okay living there. We met this guy in the elevator, Slade Steele. I think I told this story before too, but anyway, he was an old rubby guy. A lot of weird people in that place, boy. Apparently it used to be nicer at one time. I think I told you that I'd played the parties. I played their Christmas party a couple of times there for them for nothing. And anyway, when I first moved there, I ran into Julia one day, and we had another little fling for a little bit. And then she had heart problems and ended up getting a pacemaker. But I'd had enough of her by then. She's too weird and fussy, and I don't know. We just broke it off again. And I was still playing singles all over the place all the time. I had an old 64 Chrysler that I'd bought off this guy. It was in good shape back then. It was a nice car. And then I was playing. I'm going to go into my Nashville trip on a separate thing here. I'm just going to finish this little bit off. I was playing out in, I got another trip to Watson Lake I'm going to do. I was playing out in Crescent Beach Legion. I played all these legions all over, and then I started playing after the Chris Munday band broke up. We even backed up a Roy Orbison guy once. I ended up going on myself again, playing singles, and I booked all the legions. God. I was playing Crescent Beach Legion one time, and I was single. I'd been broken up with Julia for a couple of years by then, and I saw this lady dancing out on the dance floor with this sort of blonde hair. What a beautiful girl. She's not young, but I went, holy mackerel. Now there's the kind of girl I've been looking for all my life. She looked like Russian, and she had these such great moves. The way she danced was so unusual. It wasn't like someone, it was so neat. I was mesmerized by her, and I watched her all the time she danced. She was dancing with some guy with head bracers on his pants, for God's sakes. But I couldn't believe the way she moved around. And I thought, oh man, boy, I'd like to meet her. And so I'm playing my set, and when I finished playing my set, I went down to look for her, and she was gone. And I looked all over the place in the Legion for her. God, she's gone. And so I went around, I started asking all these people, you know who this was? No, we don't know that one. I said, the blonde one that was dancing so neat. Because of Marsha's sister, Irene, and Ivan, her boyfriend, husband, used to drink there all the time. Irene was even president once, but I didn't know them. And I'd had a falling out with them anyway, because one time when I was playing there was a Chinese couple wanted to do a tango or something, and I said, well, I'll bring a tape down and play it for you. And I'd played this tape, and Ivan had come up to me, and Irene had sent him up. It's too loud. And I thought, oh, I don't like those people. So I kind of told him off, and so I didn't talk to them, but I tried to find out who Marsha was, and for the next year, I went back playing there probably 3 or 4 times. Every time I went there, I asked about her. No, nobody remembered her. And I thought, gosh, that's too bad. I looked all over White Rock. Every time I walked around out in White Rock here, I was, if I came out here for some reason, I was still at Coon Towers. I looked for her, and I never seen her. And I thought, oh, gee, that's too bad. And so then I happened to be playing there one time, and all of a sudden, I look out, and there she is sitting there. God, I couldn't believe it. And she was sitting with Norma, her girlfriend. And I thought, my God, she's there. Oh. And so I kind of rushed through my set. I hope, don't leave again. And she'd remembered me. She said, I remembered that guy up there on the stage looking at me with the glassy eyes. Probably bugging out. And so I went down, and I said, where have you been? And we kissed, actually. I kissed her on the cheek, I think. And she said, oh, I was back in Los Angeles where I lived. And I just moved up here. I went, oh, my God. So I sat down, and I think we held hands a little bit, and she was touching my foot under the table, and Norma said, don't do that. He'll think you're fresh. And so, but we were enthralled with each other, really. Unbelievable. And so I walked her to the car afterward and kissed her goodnight. And I said, do you want to meet again? And she said, okay. So she gave me her phone number, and we went the next day down to Crescent Beach and took a blanket with us and laid under this tree, which is a lot bigger now, the tree, and put our arms around each other and loved each other. And that was the first time we were alone. And then we went back to her place where I live now and had, we had bacon and tomato sandwiches, and then we cuddled on the couch. And we started dating after that, and dated for a couple of years anyway. And then, meanwhile, I took the trip before I met her, I took the trip to Nashville with Ed. But after I met Marsha, we were together all the time. She would come and stay with me at Coon Towers, and I'd come out and stay with her, and it got more and more and more and more. I took her to the church I'd been going to because I wasn't drinking, and we got baptized together, and then we got married. So I'm going to do a little chapter about Marsha and I's life. Okay, let's see. That's good enough for now. Okay, here I am again. This is about my trip to Nashville, Memphis, Nesbitt, and Ferriday, Louisiana. I had three or four really good friends in my life. Well, in my later life, my friend West, David Alexander Brown, a.k.a. Rumpelstiltskin, the entire West Coast, Hayseed, Aloha Dave, that's what he called himself, all these different names. And then Roger Stomperud, who played bass with me for many years on and off, and he also engineered a lot of my music, and he also, he did a lot for me, that guy. He wrote up my whole website. He kept track of things really good. And my other friend, Tony O'Regan, who is a great artist and taught me a lot about art and has become a very good friend of mine. And then this story is mostly about Ed Sirney. Now, he lived in Burnaby. He was had a rock contracting company. They put the rock work on the Alex Fraser Bridge, and he worked for years like that. He's actually got an artifact his dad found in the Capilano River that's an old, looks like a native pounding thing for pounding corn or something. It's a beautiful piece of work. He plays steel guitar, and he has a, what's it called, a Bud or Showman steel guitar. And I met him at the Best Western Hotel where I used to play in over in Coquitlam. he used to come over there for dinner, and he'd have a couple of wine and listen, and we'd talk away, and then we became really good friends. And then when Bill Crompton died over in Burnaby, when I was living with Bill Crompton at that apartment, Ed helped me move out to BC Housing, Coon Towers, where we met Slade Steele. We always joke about that in the elevator. He was an old rubby there that lived in there. He says, "Who are you guys?" We said, "Oh, I'm Richard. I'm Ed. Who are you?" "Slade Steele." Anyway, that Coon Towers was quite the joint, full of drug addicts. It finally ended up getting bed bugs, and I happened to meet Marsha at the right time, I guess. But anyway, I don't know. I'll tell you that on my Coon Tower stories. Anyway, this is me and Ed got talking once, and we decided we were going to take a trip down to Nashville because he's a big country music fan. And so we booked our flight, planned on going to Nashville, and then I don't know if we'd planned on Memphis too, but anyway, we talked about it and booked our flights, went to the airport, and I took a week off or something. And there was another guy that I met on the cruise ships years ago named Chester Lobodinsky, and he used to come on the cruise ships. He lived out in the Midwest somewhere. I forget the name of the town. Indiana. He was in Indiana. Anyway, I used to correspond with him. He used to send me all kinds of country tapes of, Conway Twitty and tons of them. And he always thought I was the greatest thing in the world. He had all my music. And anyway, when he heard we were going to Nashville, he decided he was going to meet us down there because he'd been there many, many times. And so I wish I could remember the name of the town he lived in Indiana, but I guess it doesn't matter. Anyway, so we flew into Nashville. We had a hotel booked in the old town, and Ed and I flew in. I think the first night we went down to the Strip where they have Tootsies and these nightclubs where the Ryman Theater is and everything, and where the old Nashville. That's the nicest part of Nashville anyway. And we went down there, me and Ed, and we were drinking scotch and everything. There were some girls in there, and we had a few dances with the gals and listened to the country bands and walked up and down the street, and then went and looked at the, I don't know, I'll tell you a little bit more about downtown. We went and, I think it was the next day, maybe before we met Chester, we went and looked at the old Ryman Theater where Hank Williams and all these people, Kitty Wells and everybody in the country business in the old days used to sing there. It's a sort of a brick building, if I remember correctly. And then we went down to, the Tootsies is a little nightclub right on the Strip there where they have, where Willie Nelson wrote Crazy for Patsy Cline. He sold that song for $50. All the rights to it, too. And we went to the what was it called? I wrote his name down. The guy that did Waltz Across Texas, Ernest Tubbs. We went to the Ernest Tubb record store and the Groon guitar store where they had all kinds of really nice old guitars. They had a guitar of Chet Atkins in there, and that was in a glass case, of course. And then they had all kinds of like dobro guitars, and it's a really well-known guitar store. Everybody goes there. And then we met up with Chester. Came to town, so he took us out. He liked buffets, so he tried to take us out to this buffet for food. The food down there is kind of different because they had like steamed turnip greens and I don't know, some grits, like hominy and grits, kind of an idea and everything. So then he took us on a tour, and we went over to the new old Grand Ole Opry. They have a museum there where you can stand on the piece of the stage that was actually out of the Ryman Theater with the mic there where everybody used to sing. It's the actual piece of the stage. So we stood on there. I think I've got lots of pictures of this stuff somewhere. And there was all kinds of clothes in there, like all of Hank Snow's outfits and Marty Robbins. And there was like zillions of guitars of all these famous people, you know, that had their names on them. I've got pictures everywhere. I just can't remember them offhand. And Marty Robbins' car was in there and some of his outfits. And that was a really great museum. I mean, and we went to another place in Nashville, too, that had handprints on the ground in the cement. Jerry Lee Lewis's handprint was there. My hands fit in them just perfect. So I figured out how big his hands were. And I wish I could tell you more about that museum there, but if you look it up online in the Grand Ole Opry Museum, it'll show you everything. There's just so many guitars and stuff in there, it's hard to fathom, you know. And then Chester took us on a little tour. We went and saw where Johnny Cash's house is. That's the house where Chris Christopherson parachuted in to, because he was trying to get Johnny Cash to do Sunday Morning Coming Down. And he could never get a hold of Johnny Cash, so he used to be a paratrooper in the Army. So he parachuted into Johnny Cash's yard and made him listen to that song, and then Johnny Cash had a huge hit with it. And Ed, my friend, took a piece of the rock off the rock wall around that house. He still got it, too. I think I had a piece at one time, but then right next to his house was Roy Orbison's house. We looked at it, too. And then we also looked at George Jones's house. He's one of my all-time country favorites. And then we went out to Twitty City, or Twitter City, whatever it's called, for Conway Twitty lived. That's quite the place. It's a fancy place, sort of like a theme park almost. It was all flowers and nice brick buildings, a lot of brick down in back east because they don't have the trees we have in the west. So, but Conway Twitty, he had tons of hits. And then we went and saw where Tammy Wynette was buried in. She's in a crypt, and right next to her is little Jimmy Dickens. He bought a crypt next to her because he liked her so much, I guess. I heard another story that where Marilyn Monroe's buried in a crypt. Another guy went and bought the one right above him and buried himself upside down. Can you believe that? Anyway, we went around all the graveyards. We saw Hank Snow's grave. It says, still moving on his grave. And I took pictures of all these graves, and I've got a picture I made called Famous Graves. And I took a piece of grass off each grave, or a flower or something, and I pasted it all in this big frame. Kind of morbid, but it's kind of neat in a way. We went and saw Marty Robbins' grave, Red Foley, Ernest Tubb. There's so many I can't remember them all. The Ernest Tubb record store, of course, and we went on Ernest Tubb's touring bus. It was like an old bus, pretty small. It had sort of these kind of wooden bunk beds in it. It was very rustic, man. It was a long time ago, though, in the 50s. And it was just like a Greyhound bus, only like an old Greyhound bus. And it had like a little kitchen coffee table thing. And, you know, like the bunk beds in the back. I had a bus out in Calgary, I forgot to mention, too, when I was in the the Richard Stepp band. Derek bought us a bus. It finally broke down on the freeway, and we abandoned the damn thing. It was so old and hard to drive. It had no power. It hit a little hill, it would slow right down. But it had like the same idea, kitchen, and it had a big bedroom thing in the back, all carpeted with, we used to store our equipment in. Anyway, back to the Nashville thing. We went and seen, he introduced us to a guy down there that worked at the Gibson Les Paul factory, so I can't remember the guy's name, but we never went through that factory. We did go to RCA Studios, where Elvis recorded many, Heartbreak Hotel, and if you look that one up, everybody's recorded there in Nashville. Floyd Kramer was the house piano player for Elvis and all these people. And then there was another area in Nashville he took us. It's sort of like an alley. I should have looked up the name first, but it where all the country guys used to drink there. Chris Christopherson, Merle Haggard, you know. I become a big fan of Chris Christopherson. I wish I would have seen him live. If he ever comes to Vancouver again, I'm going to go see him. But Merle Haggard and all my favorites George Jones all used to drink down there. It's somewhere in downtown Nashville. It's a famous alley or something. I guess all the guys were alley cats. Who knows? But and then we went to there was a Civil War or a museum there that was full of all these old Confederate outfits. Me and Ed went through that together, and there was like really old Steinway pianos, the old kind that weren't. They were sort of like a square, old-fashioned. Before they made the long, grand pianos, they were. I forget, one was out of one of the president's houses, and from the old South, and it was. But the outfits in there were really neat, and there was actually an atom bomb there. Of course, it wasn't a live bomb, but it shows you how big they were. We went and I think we took some pictures of that. I should have made this thing with pictures, but anyway. From Nashville, after we did all the graves and went and seen the downtown part, because we were going to come back there anyway, so we went down to, we rented a car and drove down to Memphis. And Memphis is where, Elvis and Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Roy Orbison, Sun Records is there. And so we went down and we got a hotel down in Memphis. And the countryside's really neat on the drive down there. It's sort of flat, and they don't have the big evergreen trees like we have in BC here, but it's very different, and a lot of brick buildings and old-fashioned buildings, not much wood. But we went down to Memphis, and we got this hotel, and out our window we could see that pyramid building they have down there on the river. I guess it's the Mississippi still down there, with the bridges over it. And that Pyramid Hotel is where a lot of people put on concerts. Elvis played there, and it's a famous concert venue there. So it looks like a sort of like a black pyramid with glass, And then we were down at the end of one of this long street in Memphis, and so we decided to walk up to Beale Street. That's the main drag for all the blues clubs, and we couldn't believe how dead it was downtown Memphis. There was hardly anybody walking around. It was like kind of like an abandoned city or something. It was a strange looking place. Then we got to Beale Street. Of course, it's like it's a popular place for tourists. They have B.B. King's club there, and they have this other club we went into. It's got all these guitars hanging from the ceiling that are signed by, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Johnny Winter, Eric Clapton. They're all hanging from the ceiling in this restaurant. All the guys used to go there and jam, I guess. And then me and Ed decided, we walked up and down Beale Street for a while and looked at all the stuff, and then we decided to go have some ribs because they're famous for Memphis ribs and stuff. So we went to this ribs place and went in there. It was quite the place. I'd seen the couple next to us. They got this great big piece of beef that was like medium rare, and it was like sort of like a big thick steak for two. And then so me and Ed decided we were going to have ribs. So we ordered a whole rack of ribs each, and it came with pork and beans and cornbread, and I forget what else, fries or something. But, oh, God, been drinking scotch all night, going so excited being in Memphis, where all the music had come from. And so we ate all these ribs and everything, went back to the hotel, and, God, I don't think I felt good for the whole trip after that. I felt sick after that, eating all those ribs. The next day we got up, and we went out to Elvis's mansion, and so we took the tour through the house, Elvis's house, and it was a beautiful place. The huge rock wall around it, around this estate, is something. First thing Ed said was, "Look at that wall. That cost a fortune nowadays," because he was in the rock business. So he was pretty impressed. And the house had a lot of stone, I think, and it wasn't super big, but it had, when you went in the front door, there was a room with a grand piano sitting in it. We weren't allowed to go in that. Then we went in this other room, I think it was called like the Jungle Room or something, where Elvis used to party with all his buddies, and there was a pool table in there and a bunch of stuff like that. We weren't allowed to go upstairs either, where he died. And then we go at the back. There's some buildings out the back. One big building that we went through was just lined with all of Elvis's gold records, like just walls of them. These are the real gold records he got. And we walked up and down and marveled at, it's like overwhelming. There's so many. And whole bunch of his outfits, that he wore, and stage outfits. I think even the gold jackets in there that he wore on one of his early albums. And then there's a separate building again, which is full of like more stuff, all these trophies and CDs that came out, and it's another huge building just full of stuff. It's really neat. And in the backyard, behind these buildings, there's sort of like a place where they used to ride horses and stuff like that. But there's two. The one gallery is all full of gold records, and the other one's full of CDs and trophies, and I think outfits too, and all that. And then you walk around the corner, and there's the graves there. It's Elvis's grave, and his mother and his father's grave are all there together, so you can stand and look at those. So we stood there, and I don't know what we did, said a prayer, looked at it. I reached over and grabbed a little piece of grass that's right beside Elvis's grave for my souvenir collection for my famous graves. And when I was walking out, a bird shit on my head. And someone said, "Oh, well, that's probably the ghost of Elvis. He shouldn't be taking grass off his grave." Anyway, what was his name? Vernon. Vernon was his dad's name. I can't remember his mother's name offhand, but anyway, everybody knows that, sort of. Then we went down, and I don't know if we went down from Memphis that one day or when we came back from, I think we did it on our way back from, no, we went on the way down, I guess. We went to see Jerry Lee Lewis's house. It's in Nesbitt, Mississippi, just south of Memphis, not that far away. So we went down there, and we finally found it. It's got another big rock wall. It's on 88 acres, like the piano with a lake. But now it's a museum. You can go and tour through the house. It's got all his stuff in there. But when we went there, there was a big padlock on the gate with a chain, and we yelled and banged a little bit. Nobody came out. I don't know if anybody was there or not. Who knows? Maybe he was touring, or it sort of seemed like nobody. Well, it didn't seem like. It just seemed like that they had it all locked up, so you couldn't get in. And the fence around it was a big rock fence, also, and cement. And it had graffiti all over it about Jerry Lee Lewis, from fans that had written on it. And it was quite a nice big house too, not like Elvis's, but it was pretty big too, like a ranch, more like a rancher or something. But it's on a big acreage, out in the country, way out in the country. And then we went and I picked up a couple of acorns and a few souvenirs off the ground. It's too bad that we couldn't have seen a caretaker or something, because I'm such a fan of Jerry Lee. And anyway, I was thrilled to be at his house. And then I think, then we went through Elvis's, the day we were at Elvis's house, we also went to the restaurant across the street. There was an Elvis restaurant. And at the restaurant, there's a whole bunch of more stuff of his, like his cars, all these Cadillacs and memorabilia of Elvis's is over there. I went in the restaurant. I think we had a hamburger or something, but I told the waitress, "Why aren't you playing Elvis music?" They had some kind of crappy music playing through the speakers in the background. I thought, Here you go to the Elvis Cafe and they're not even playing Elvis music, for God's sakes. And then we went through his airplane. It's called Taking Care of Business. His big airplane that he used to, well, it's not big, it's a DC-3 or something. But we went in there, walked through there, and there was like a lounge part. And then there was, I think, a little bit of a, can't remember if there was a sleeping area for the band members. I guess there was. But in the back was this big bedroom that was Elvis's, and it had this huge bed with a huge seat, like a seat belt that went over the whole bed to strap you in at night so you didn't fall out in case you were flying somewhere and hit an air pocket. I always remember that big bed with the big belt over it. And then we drove down to Ferriday, Louisiana. We decided we're going to go down and see where Jerry Lee was born and came from. So we drove down through Mississippi. We stopped at a restaurant, I think, for breakfast. There was all these fat guys sitting on these little chairs, like up at the counter with those little round stools that you sit on with the chrome. And all their asses were hanging over the edge. They're all fat. Everything's buffet. You go to this big, huge buffet in the morning, like with bacon and ham and all these eggs and, turnip greens and grits and the same old thing, But we did see a lot down there was all these armadillos. A lot of them get hit on the highway. Those things roll up into a little ball that looks like a small beach ball when they're scared or something to protect themselves because they got this armor on them. And then from there we went to down to Natchez. There's songs about the Natchez Bridge over the Mississippi. I was so excited, man. I couldn't believe it. I was down there. Where all that music came from that and on the way down, we'd stopped at a cotton field, down in Louisiana, where the cotton fields are by the Mississippi River. I remember hearing Jerry Lee songs or a Jerry Lee story where they whipped up onto the levee. Well, the big levees are what keeps that river from going all over the place into the fields. And Ed took a hunk of cotton. It was kind of neat to see cotton plants. There was cotton, the whatever they are, the flowers open up and turn into like fluffy cotton. And he put one on like a mustache. I got a picture of him somewhere. Yeah. When those cotton balls get rotten, you can't pick very much cotton. The old cotton fields back home. Well, down in Louisiana, just about a mile from a Texarkana. In them old cotton fields back home. Anyway, we got to Ferriday. It's just like a teeny little hole in the wall, nothing there much. And we drove around. We found there's a museum there. I don't think we actually went through it. It's not a very good one. It's the sort of the town one, but we actually found Jerry Lee's house. I think this is actually the second house because the very, very first one where he lived with his parents was different. And he did live in this one too, but anyway. His sister lives there, Frankie Jean Lewis. She was living there with her husband, Marion. And it's an old, kind of small little rustic house. And then we got out of the car and knocked on the door. And this, I think it was the guy answered first. And he said, "Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll go get Frankie Jean." I thought, really? Jerry Lee's sister? You're going to bring her over here? I couldn't believe it. And so she comes around the corner. She's so friendly. "Hi, guys." She got these two little Rugrats dogs. One of them bit Ed. And she says, "Come on in. Oh, come on in." So we go in the back door of this place. And it's like a rec room full of all kinds of, there's a TV there. There's an old piano in there that used to be John Lennon's. And whole bunch of stuff like that, and all these videos. She said, "Here, come on, I'll take you through the house." And so we went up into the house from the back little rec room or whatever it's called, And in the house, there's a big grand piano in there. It was Jerry Lee's, and there's some fiddles and guitars and all kinds of stuff. Even, and we went in his bedroom. His pipes are in there. That he smoked pipes all the time. That guy, and his clothes that he from some of his movies are hanging in the closet where he did. I forget one of that movie he did. The very early movie. Open honey, honey, it's your lover boy and me that's a knockin'. Right down the high school rockin'. Get your rockin' shoes. Jukebox blowing a fuse. Everybody rockin', everybody boppin', boppin' at the high school hop. Anyway, he's got the clothes from that movie and, the pipes and all that stuff. And then went in another bedroom that used to be Linda Gales Lewis's bedroom. Now, she was a star that in her own right that plays like Jerry Lee. She's still playing. I'm friends with her too. I've never actually met her personally, shaken hands, but I'm friends with her on Facebook and everything else, and she knows the story about me and Frankie Jean, so we're kind of close now because Frankie Jean died, and Frankie Jean used to actually sell my CDs in her little store down there that I sent down to her. She liked my music a lot, my gospel songs and everything. And she used to tell me stories about when they were young. Frankie Jean did about, they'd sit around playing the piano. Jerry Lee would sit and practice when he was a little kid for hours and hours. He liked it so much, and feet couldn't even reach the floor. And then his dad would have to come in and make him go to bed. Get to bed. You got to go to bed to school, because Jerry Lee and Mickey Gilley and Jimmy Swaggart used to hang out together. They're all play the same, They used to go and cross the tracks and watch the black guys, the black music, and so, they got influenced like that. But Linda Gales Lewis, her bedroom was there with a bunch of stuff. She used to do TV shows and everything with Jerry Lee, and she plays all over Europe still in Nashville. She's sort of a star in her own right. She's done many albums and stuff like that, but there was a check on the wall from Elvis Presley for $5,000 that he'd given to Frankie Jean for some reason. She never cashed it. It's a real check signed by Elvis too, with his signature and everything. And then there was a letter from Hank Williams, I think, to Jerry Lee, signed by him too, hanging in there. All kinds of stuff like that. Even the little potty Jerry Lee used to sit on when he was a baby. And violins and all kinds of stuff. And she was so nice to us. She said, well, if you guys want to go and get a motel, come on back later, and I'll leave the back door open. Just come on in, and there's videos back there of Jerry Lee and everything. Make yourself at home. I'll be over doing something else, so you guys make yourself at home and mix some drinks and watch the videos, and when you leave, just shut the door and make sure it's locked on the way out. While we were there, we heard some gunshots down the road somewhere. She says, oh, there's people nowadays, But anyway, it was that was so nice of her to do that. She never came in at night when we were there, but we got drunk and listened to all this Jerry Lee stuff. And then we went, they had next door, part of this house there was like a building next door with an archway, and it was a drive-through liquor store that her husband, Marion, used to run. And she worked there too, and so you just drive up and you drive into this building through one end, buy your liquor and drive out the other end. And it was kind of weird. Anyway, so after we went back there that night and got drunk, and I was so excited being there, seeing all my heroes stuff and meeting Frankie Jean Lewis. I couldn't believe I met her. And we kept in touch for years and years and years. I have many postcards and stuff. She used to send me these handwritten postcards and letters. I don't say many. I have 4 or 5 of them probably. And she used to glue things on them and paint things on them. She used to paint pictures and stuff like that when she lived at home. But she used to draw stuff on and tell me stories about, them singing gospel songs at Christmas when they were kids. She even sent me a tape once of Jerry Lee practicing with a bunch of guys laughing and joking, drinking and playing all these songs. And what did Jerry Lee said to one of the friends? Something about, if you keep, something like, if you take your teeth out, I might even marry you. Another one he said one time at a concert when someone started hassling him. He said, hey, you keep talking to me like that, I might let you keep your wife. Whatever that means. Anyway, when the stores down there, they used to sell hot peanuts in these, because they grow a lot of peanuts down there. That's where Carter came from, the president, Billy Carter and Jimmy Carter. They had a peanut farm. And so they had hot peanuts, but one thing they did have was pickled pig's lips in little packages in a brine or something. I bought one and brought it back to Vancouver, and I had it for quite a while. I guess I was living at Coon Towers by the time we went to Nashville. That's when I first moved at Coon Towers. So I kept them in my fridge, but I could never get brave enough to try one. They looked pretty funny. And so when we were in Ferriday, after we'd partied at Jerry Lee's house, and then we went back to this motel, we were drinking scotch and everything, me and Ed. And then I don't know, I got so thirsty in the night. I drank water out of the tap or out of the ice water or something down there. Oh my God, I still didn't feel the greatest from eating those ribs up in Nashville, or in Memphis, but man, I was so sick the next day. I don't know what happened from the water, I guess. That's my excuse, not the scotch. I was sick, so sick. I had to lay on the back seat all the way back up to, we went up halfway to Nashville and stayed in a hotel. And I was sick in the hotel, but we ended up having a few drinks anyway, and I was still sick. And then by the time we got to Nashville, I was really sick. I threw up. I threw up so much that my ribs hurt, and nothing would come up. I just gag in the toilet. And I was so sick. Ed went down to the old Strip the last night by himself and had a few drinks and looked around down there. And then I was just too sick, and then we flew home after that. So that was my experience down there. And then Frankie Jean and I kept in touch for many years after that, and she used to write me letters, and I'd send her stuff and talk to her on the phone once in a while. And even when I was with Marsha, we used to phone her once in a while. She was so down to earth and nice. I never got to meet Jerry Lee. I wish I could have, but anyway, I could have, if she was still alive now, if I went down there, I could have. She even offered to let me live at her house once. Why don't you come down and stay with me and help me look after the museum? But she was always kind of digging for money off people to help her keep that place going. I don't think Jerry Lee ever gave her much money. So, and nowadays I keep in touch with Linda Gale, her sister, and she did a lot of performances with Jerry Lee. Linda, she plays like Jerry, she'll have a foot up on the piano and does all that stuff. So I sent her some of my stuff here and there. I actually sent her a piano trick I invented that even Jerry Lee doesn't do. But nobody's ever done the backward piano like I do. And not anybody. Anyway, that was all I can think of for now from that thing. Is the Mississippi River is pretty neat, big and wide and beautiful. So anyway, that's my story. There's the footnote to Nashville. I forgot to tell you about Ed Sirney, my friend. He actually was a really good friend of mine. He lent me his dobro guitar. He's got an old dobro guitar from probably 1929, 1930. It's the sweetest guitar I think I've ever played. It's set up for playing slide, but it's a round neck. And I had it for 5 or 6 years until one time after I'd married Marsha. She used to go on these tears. She, I don't know, one night she got drinking and threatened to, I'm going to smash your guitars if you don't watch out or something. And I made the mistake of telling Ed that, and he took his guitar back, and I never got it back. You know, I'm sorry to this day I never got. I loved that guitar. Maybe one day I'll get it. But Anyway, Ed had enough faith in me. He said to me, "Why don't you make a live recording?" I used to play, he was a member of the Gyro Club, and I used to play all their dances. And so I said, okay, well, I think a good place would be the Army Navy Club in North Vancouver. It's like a real hole in the wall. That place was packed every night, full of people all drinking and smoking, and it was a great place to play. And so I got Lou Hoover, who was the recording engineer that I knew from recording all these songs I did, 50-something songs at his studio in Delta. Lou, unfortunately, now has Parkinson's disease. He's in a home over here. He's got another thing called Lee's disease, too, which is like a dementia. And he's just totally screwed now. But anyway, he was a great drummer around town. And his brother was Jason Hoover from the Epics, Jason Hoover and the Epics. Anyway, Lou played drums on a lot of my recordings and bass too. And so, anyway, he came over to the Army Navy. We did 3 nights over there where I recorded live. I think I was getting a little bit drunk on some of the nights, though, because I'm kind of embarrassed I did that. But some of the cuts and I think What Did I Say, you can almost tell I'm loaded on that one. But anyway, I did the best I could. I think I was popping some kind of pills and drinking too much, but he made these live tapes, and I should have actually kept them in sets. Like, I do have the box of they're like a DVD that he made me with the cuts on them, but I ended up making them into like a mellow tape, a country tape, and a rock and roll tape. And then I made another tape called A Little Bit of Everything, where I put different parts. And I got them made up, and we got jackets made for them and everything, and I took them out to a CD place, and we made up a whole bunch of CDs. Cost Ed about $1,500 to do this. And so, actually, we sold them all. I got a few left stuck away called Richard Stepp Live. And they're over in, I got them saved away in boxes and stuff like that. But my thanks to Ed for that, because he's been a great friend of mine. And he's sort of like, well, he's, I think, 85, 86 now. He's sort of like my dad to me. Anyway, thank you, Ed. Well, good morning. February 9th, 2020. I've said some of these things before in my whole story. It's over 12 hours long now. This is about Marsha and I. Her name was Marsha Washko, born in Tomahawk, Alberta, 1931, July 12th, they think. They didn't keep too good of records back then. Her parents came from Ukraine, Steppenville, I think it was called. After Stalin took over Ukraine, they took over everybody's farms and took them away from them, nationalized all the farms, and so they took a boat over. Irene was born already, and Robert was born, I think, and they took a boat over to, a ship over from Europe over to Montreal, and then they took a train over to probably Calgary and or Edmonton, and then they had to, they got this piece of homesteaded land, and her parents were named Thomas and Julia, and they got to this piece of land, and it was like all wooded and everything. They had to start out and clear the land. Marsha said they used to, he used to butcher a pig and bury it in the ground in the summer, I guess, with sawdust and ice from the winter. And, you know, they ended up having 8 kids. They had Marsha, well, they had, let's see, Robert, Irene, Mary, Anne, John, Paul, and Marsha. And so Marsha was the first one born in Canada, and it was a tough life. I wish I had some pictures of when she was very little. She used to tell me about her uncle used to chase her around. She was she told me also that the doctor that delivered her had told her parents she was the most beautiful baby that he'd ever delivered. And I can believe that, because as she got older, and she's 88 going 89 now, and she's still beautiful. Even if all her teeth fell out, she'd be beautiful. Her bone structure is so nice, and her skin is smooth as a baby, you know. Even the girls that are at the care home where Marsha is now say the same thing, you know. And they homesteaded, and out there, I know Marsha told me one time she saved Irene's life in the winter when it was so cold in Alberta. Irene, they had to walk a long ways to school, and Irene kept wanting to lay down in the snow and have a sleep, you know. Marsha kept making her get up. Irene's always crabby. They never got along too good, Irene and Marsha. I think Irene was always jealous of Marsha because she was so cute and good looking, and even nowadays it's like you go to see Irene. Hi, Irene. She goes, hello, goodbye. You know, sometimes she can be funny, though, so I don't know. We had him over for Christmas once, and we made all this food, and I made all this French-Canadian dinner for Ivan, Irene's husband, and tortilla pie and roasted vegetables and a maple syrup pie for dessert. And so then when we went over for their place they said come over for Christmas dinner, we went over there about 3 o'clock when they told us to come, and they said, oh, well, we had our dinner at lunchtime with the boys. There's leftovers in the fridge. Help yourself. Then they drank our wine, and they had a crappy-looking, cheap Christmas tree, a blue thing. So I don't know. We never really hung out with them too much. So anyway, Marsha was, she was born up in Tomahawk and lived around Highvale on a farm. And I don't know that much more about her early days, except she came to Vancouver and got an apartment with Irene in the West End. She showed me that building once, and she got a job at the stock exchange marking the board when it was done by chalk, you know. Vancouver had a stock exchange down in Howe, I think it was Hornby or Howe, in the downtown part. So she lived in the West End. I bet the boys looked at her when she was marking the board. Man, she's a beautiful girl. I've got a picture of her walking down Granville when she was young. Gee, I'm a lucky guy to ever meet her. And she was marking the board, and then there was a guy that either worked at the stock exchange or something, and she met his son, who was Bill Patterson, and I guess they started dating or something. I don't know how long they went out together. Apparently he was kind of a funny guy. He could play piano too, and he drank heavy, but they ended up getting married and living in Richmond. And then they had 2 children, Lynn and Patricia. And then what happened is he got transferred down to, they were either going to go to New York or Los Angeles. I'm not sure what he sold, but they went down to Los Angeles and they bought a house on Farallone. And they only were down there a few years when Bill drank heavy. I don't know if it's true. Marsha said he broke her arm once, but Marsha could get pretty haywire drinking too, so I don't know. Who knows what went on. But I don't know if Bill was mean to her. I don't think he was, but I don't know. I know Marsha pretty good, but I know he caught the Patty. Patty was a haywire when she was doing drugs and starting to do drugs. I remember they said he caught her once and got mad at her, but when they were young teenagers, Marsha, I don't know if Marsha was, it was his birthday, and Marsha was going to go out shopping, and he said he didn't feel too good, and so he went out to shop, and she went out to shop, and when she came home, he was laying dead on the floor, had a heart attack, and she said it was the worst thing in her whole life she ever had to do was tell her children that he died. And then she told me a story once that he actually said goodbye to her. She's seen his face or something in the clouds or in a vision, or she said it was him. he'd come to say goodbye, and I guess I believe in those things. Those things can happen. She said she's seen him in the clouds, and he said goodbye. And anyway, she got a job at J.C. Penney down in Northridge, California, and raised her 2 daughters down there through their teenage years and everything. And Patty met a guy named Harry and married him. And Lynn married Craig. And then Lynn had Hannah and Jonathan, 2 children. And so anyway, Patty never had any children. She was married to Harry. And then they broke up. Harry moved out to Denver, around Denver somewhere. And he had Bill's pool table. Marsha was always mad about that. She got on the phone one night. She was going at him, and he called her a witch. Anyway, he came to our wedding, Harry did. But Patty eventually, she gave Patty her Wildcat car. And Patty was so irresponsible, she left it on the freeway somewhere, abandoned it. It was like a real nice car. And then Lynn told me in later years Patty was drinking real heavy, and she met some guy, and she was living in this guy's basement, some guy's rich guy, but she wasn't allowed to go upstairs, and he was just using her for a sex toy and everything. And then I think she got some kind of liver problems or something and died because she wasn't that old. That's why Lynn's so against drinking. Well, her father drank heavy, you see, so... Anyway, what happened is when I was up here playing, I've been playing singles jobs all over the place, and Marsha, I was single at the time. I'd been dating years before. After Lisa, I had met a few girls like Robin and Heather. Robin was sort of serious a bit, and then I met Julia. I was enthralled with her, but that didn't work out too good. So I'd been single for a few years, not dating anybody, and I seen this girl dancing at the Legion, at the Crescent Beach Legion when I was playing there. And, I've played many gigs, tell you. And, I didn't hardly ever meet anybody, really. People you meet in bars usually are not worth it. And, it's when you're playing, you're busy, Marsha used to get jealous about, I took her to all my gigs anyway, but anybody that got jealous about me out playing while I'm playing, and, it's not that easy to meet people, but I guess anyway, I saw her dancing out in the dance floor with some guy. He had bracers on his coat and or on his pants, like dressed kind of funny. I don't know who he was, because Marsha had come up here apparently. I don't know if it was that time or not, to meet this old boyfriend of hers. And he lived in Victoria, and he had a boat or something. I think he'd been an ex-cop or something. Lynn told me this story, and that Marsha had went out with him a couple of times, but I think he'd been divorced. He was tied up. It just didn't work, You can't really go back. I tried that once too, and I didn't try it, but I just know it doesn't work. So anyway, she'd gone and seen him, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if that was the guy she was dancing with, but I saw her dancing, and the way she moved and her blonde hair and just her facial features, like she looked, Russian, and that's always sort of been my favorite kind of, Scottish or Russian, like light-skinned like that. And the way she danced with her arms out was so unique. I mean, I've seen a lot of people dance, and I thought, wow, look at that one dancing. And I thought, gee, boy, is she ever great. What a beautiful girl. And so I'm watching her all the time she's playing, and years later she said, I seen that guy up on that stage watching me with those glassy eyes. That was me. Anyway, I thought, I got to go and find out who she is, and so I'm playing my set, and then all of a sudden she's gone. She left. And I thought, oh, damn it, anyway. And so I went down and after my set, and I started asking everybody, do you know who that one here was dancing? And people hadn't been paying much attention. I guess they said, I don't know who that was. What blonde, you know? I said, that one that was dancing so neat out there, that was so beautiful. And nobody knew who she was. Now, Irene and Evan were probably there that night, but I'd had a run-in with them a long time or before that at one time. And of course, Irene's crabby, and there was a Chinese couple that came down, wanted me to play a tango, and I didn't know how to play a tango, so I went and got a recorder and was playing it through my PA, and Irene sent Evan up to say, it's too loud, and I sort of told him off, so I never talked to them. So, you know, Irene was even president of that Legion at one time, and so I went back about, I asked everybody that night, all the bartender, you know, the waitresses, nobody knew who she was, Marsha. And I went back there about 3 or 4 times during the next year, playing there. And every time I went there, I asked, sip of my coffee here. I asked everybody if they remembered her. You know, people I hadn't seen before or asked before, and nobody could remember who she was. And so after a whole year went by, I was thinking, oh, I guess that's too bad, you know. I kept thinking about her the whole year. And so all of a sudden I look out there one time when I'm playing there she is sitting there with her girlfriend, Norma. And I thought, oh my God, she's back. And so I couldn't wait to get off the stage. So I finished my set a little bit early. And I went down and I said, where have you been? I said, I've been looking for you for a whole year. And she remembered me, and you know, we sort of hit it off right away. I think I kissed her on the cheek, and then I sat down. We were so excited to be together. It was unbelievable. And I guess she'd been thinking about me too. I don't know. I hope so. Anyway, we held hands and we were touching our feet under the table, and Norma, her girlfriend, said to her, don't do that. You know, I think you're fresh or something. But we were so attracted to each other. It was unbelievable. And we just wanted to hold each other and talk and hug and kiss and everything. So then I walked her to the car, and she had the T-bird that she just brought up, and I kissed her goodnight and gave her nice hugs, and we exchanged numbers, and she gave me her number, and I said, well, do you want to go out and we do something together? I wasn't drinking at the time, so I said, well, I'll phone you in the morning. So I phoned her in the morning, and she said, why don't you come, because I was living at Coon Towers then out in Surrey Central. And so she said, why don't you come out and we'll go down to Crescent Beach or something. I said, yeah, that'd be great. Come out for lunch. And so I came out to White Rock, and we went down to Crescent Beach, and there was a big, actually wasn't very big. We took a blanket with us, and there's a tree down there near the parking lot on the lawn. And so we went down, put a blanket down, and I think we had 2 blankets. Anyway, we laid on the thing and talked and actually hugged, and it was a little bit, I think we put the blanket away. It was so good to actually put our arms around each other. And then we were alone, you know. And then we got in the car and came back to the house for lunch, and she made bacon and tomato sandwiches, and we went and sat on the couch and kissed and hugged and did all that kind of stuff. And then we didn't really make love or nothing, but we started going out together quite a bit, and I think we did sort of try to make love a little bit once, and I don't know what it was, but I sort of backed off because I thought, gee, I wonder if I shouldn't push so much or something on her. And so I kind of, we just were getting to know each other, even though we wanted to be with each other. She went away for 3 weeks or a couple of weeks or something, and we didn't see each other anyway after the first date. We were so excited on the first date. I think too soon. Anyway, she said, "Oh, we got forever, you know." Or maybe that was the second date. I can't remember. We got lots of time. Don't worry about it. And I was too excited. That's all. You can't help it. But anyway, she went away, and that was when Patty died. Patty died, and I feel so terrible that I wasn't with Marsha when Patty died, because now that I've been with her for many years, it hurts my heart that I wasn't with her. And she was away, and then she came back, and I guess after 2 or 3 weeks, I phoned her, or she phoned me or something, and we started talking again. We couldn't stand to be apart, you know, and then we started phoning each other, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 times a day, and talking on the phone, and then we started going out again together, and I would come out to see her, and we'd go out and have lunch and stuff like that, and then we started sleeping together, of course, and she'd come into my place at Coon Towers and stay there with me once in a while, and now we go out and do stuff. We used to go walking down the beach and looking for rocks, and we had a lot of fun together. And I remember one time I tried to come out. It was winter time, and it started to snow, and I had an old station wagon. And I had my 64 Chrysler. It was a nice car. And I got into it, and I started down King George. I had a bottle of wine. I guess we'd started drinking by then again. But I had a bottle of wine with me, and I'm getting down King George, and I got down to about, 88th or 80th Avenue on King George, coming from Surrey Central, and the snow got so bad, worse and worse and worse. That car was just awful in the snow, and I thought, geez, if I get down to King George, where you have to go down that big hill to the flats, I'll slip out and end up in the ditch, and I'll never get out there. So I turned around and made it back partway home, and I had to put the car on. I was off King George, but I had to, sort of ram the car into the snowbank and then walk the rest of the way home with my bottle of wine. So then I phoned her up. I guess I drank the wine, and then she came over to Coon Towers one Christmas, probably the same year. I don't know. They had a Christmas party there, and I volunteered to play for nothing, and so Marsha came with me, stayed overnight. We were having drinks by then, but we went down there, and I played, and they had this buffet, came in, and Marsha told me there was a girl there. She brought this little box with her, and she kept going back, getting more food and sticking it in the box to take upstairs. They're quite the crew in that Coon Towers, I'm telling you. That was an interesting place. But Marsha was really down to earth, And when we first started dating, and I took her to the church, we weren't drinking. Sometimes we drank, sometimes we didn't. I started getting an indication on her drinking thing. I'm no angel at drinking either, believe me. It seems like everybody ever, lots of times I end up in, fighting with people. People get owly when they drink. Not me so much, though, but I don't think I do anyway. But my sister never liked it when I drank, because I always called her Donna. She said, "You've been drinking, haven't you?" But I've had a lot of fun drinking, too. But me and Marsha did, too. But a couple of times when we were first dating, I noticed she kind of flipped out when we were drinking, and then the next day when I phoned her, she always said, "Oh, geez, I'm sorry, I did that," and so I kind of let it go, But usually, if you get an inkling of something, it's the truth, So anyway, when we weren't drinking, I took her. I couldn't wait when she told me about her dad being, reading the Bible every morning and being such a religious guy. He sort of used to be minister to people up around Highville. Excuse me, I couldn't wait to take her to this church. When I came back off the ships and was sort of in recovery from too much drinking and everything and depression, I tried to go to AA, and I hated it. You know, all these people sitting around talking about how much they used to drink. They all used to smoke, and, you know, a bunch of, I don't know. And then, you know, they say, believe in a higher power, even if it's a rock, or, I don't know. It just didn't wash with me. So I tried a bunch of different churches, and even with years before. And then I found this church, I think actually about four or 5 years ago, when I'd been dating Julia. We went to these different churches. She used to act like she was religious, but she really wasn't. And then she took me to this church in New Westminster, and it was the Emmanuel Pentecostal Church. And I went in there, and I fell right in love with that church because it was so old-fashioned. It was a really nice old brick church built in 1859, and the minister was so great. And Pastor Reynolds, he was such a strong minister and told the truth so good. And Sister Newsham was there. Sister Crandall also, who was a matriarch of the church, that she sort of took me under her wing. And I'd broken up with Julie a long time ago, and I'd gone to that church for years after. And the church was, you know, it was like a really good church. They even offered me an apartment once if I wanted one. But I thought, I don't know, because once you get in that church, you're in there forever, and it's like a full-time job. But Sister Crandall, I sort of visited her up until the night she died. She was very old, and I wrote a song called The Greatest Song of All is a song about Jesus, and I sang it to her before she died. And then Sister Newsham, she was an old Alberta lady that I told this story before. She used to sing hymns to the cows, and she'd read the Bible in the outhouse because her family wasn't religious. She was always mad because one of her sisters or her sons was a Jehovah's Witness that she didn't believe in. But anyway, I took Marsha to that church, and I knew she'd love it, and Marsha fell in love with that church too. So we started going all the time, and then we'd go on, you know, take holidays together a little bit and stuff, and you know, do a few things like that. She had the T-Bird. She used to drive out to Coon Towers, and I was still living there. And so we tended church pretty steady, and we didn't drink at the time. We used to drink for a bit, and then we'd quit for a bit. And then we actually decided we'd get baptized. Marsha said she'd never been baptized, so, and I don't know if she had or not, but I'd never been baptized, so we went there, we studied up, and, you know, they like you to speak in tongues in that church, but I never did. Neither did Marsha. Marsha told me her dad used to, though. But I used to, I wrote down a bunch of stuff in case I would, you know, but not pretend. I can't pretend things, so I wrote things that, you know, when you're praising the Lord, praise the Lord, oh, hallelujah, and all that, you know. Then when we went to get baptized, Sister Newsham was Marsha's partner, and I had this brother, what's his name? Brother Hobson or something his name was. He's a big, sort of a fat guy, and he got his arms on me, you know. They always put their hand on you, and then they shake your hand like trying to get you going to start talking in tongues, because they, you know, that's what they think at that church. When you start talking in tongues, oh, he's got the Holy Spirit. Well, I can't fake something like that. It's got to be real, you know. So I don't know. I just hallelujah'd and all that. Well, he did that. Jobson, that's his name, Brother Jobson. Anyway, Pastor Reynolds' son, I liked him, Steve. He was kind of a nice guy. Me and Marsha went to a Bible study with this guy, another Stephen Vindy, for a while. We went to their house at night and studied the Bible. And anyway, we got baptized and went up, and she had a nightie on or something. I had sort of, fuzzies and an old shirt on or something. I can't remember. And we went down and they got in the tank, and they submerged you right under in this place. And then Pastor Reynolds came and prayed over us and baptized us. So we got baptized. And then that was I don't know what summer that was. We met in 2003, I guess. Maybe that was 2004. And we went to, we decided we were going to go to Sicamous that summer on a holiday. So we went and rented a houseboat, and we were going to go up the lake together, just the two of us, not drink or nothing. But then we ended up getting, I don't know, I mentioned it to Jesse. He was going out with a girl named Leah at the time. Oh, yeah, we got to go with you. I thought, oh, God, why did I mention it? As much as I loved Jesse, but we were sort of, I knew it would happen if we went like that. It would be drinking and everything. And he always wanted to smoke a lot of dope, and I don't like smoking dope unless I drink. So I thought, what the heck, we've been straight for a couple of years. And so we went up to Sicamous, me and Marsha, and got a whole bunch of booze, and then we waited and waited. We went down to the houseboat and loaded a bunch of groceries and stuff on it. We waited and waited and waited, and finally Jesse came up, just late in the day too. He'd slept in or some damn thing, and he'd driven up there like, I don't know, who knows how speed, 90 miles an hour. Got up there, and then he wanted to buy a bunch of steaks and all that, so we went and bought a whole bunch of steaks and got on the boat, and then went up the lake. It was lots of fun. We were all partying and having a beer, driving up, and we went up the lake and partied that night. We had a really good time. And then I think the next day we had a party on the beach and hiked around and smoked a bunch of pot and everything. And I don't know if it was the next day or the day after, but we got going way too much, way too many joints, way too many drinks. And then I don't know what happened to it. Jesse was in one room with Leah, and we were all partying together on the boat. And then everything got turned to crap, and Jesse started getting mad at us, and he called Marsha a bitch, and told me what a horrible dad I was, and that I'd hired a dancing girl once for his birthday. When he had a birthday and I was staying in a motel, I'd hired this girl one time to come over and dance around. And that was a pretty stupid thing to do, but anyway, it was innocent enough. But and he got onto my case about what a horrible dad I was, and I don't know, we all went to bed, and so I got mad in the morning and got up and drove the houseboat back. They got off the boat, and me and Marsha stayed on shore for the last day. We just stayed on shore and drank wine or whatever. Anyway, that was a disaster, that whole thing. But while we were on there, we started talking about getting married. And because we ended up that we were always, I was always coming out here to stay at her house, or she was coming into my house. We're back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So, I don't know, we started talking about it and maybe think about it for a bit, and then I guess we finally decided that's a good idea because we couldn't stand to be apart. So I went and bought her a nice wedding ring, or an engagement ring. I think it was about $1,500 or something like that. And then I was a little nervous because where I was living I had this apartment through BC Housing because I'd been on a disability thing part-time from being depressed and everything. So, it was like a place I could keep forever, and it was cheap rent. It was only like $400 a month or something. And so, I knew if I got married, I'd have to give up my security and put all my trust into Marsha. So anyway, we decided to get married. So we just arranged it at the church, and everybody, Pastor Reynolds married us, and it was a beautiful wedding. It's on film. It's on YouTube also, Richard and Marsha's wedding. And they put on a big party for us downstairs with all this food and everything. And Marsha's family came up, Lynn and Brian. Harry came from Colorado. We had, I think Steve and Vindy were there, Sister Newsham, Sister Terry, who's a little black lady, who's a good friend of mine from the church. And then we had, my sister came down, and Chelsea and Chris, her husband, and Jesse and Leah. And, there was a lot of people there. Ed Sirney and Jean came, his girlfriend. And then there was a couple from West Van that came over. Forget their names now offhand. If I think of it later, I'll say it. She was a haywire one. Oh, God. We met them over at the West Van Legion. She used to dance around, kicking her legs up in the air. She had no underwear on, thank God. But she was kind of a hoot. And her and this other guy, anyway, they came to the wedding too. And remember a story about, he was married, this guy, and he used to go out with this other one all the time. I heard his wife came down one time and smacked the other one. You know that what happens in legions anyway. So anyway, after our wedding, I drove my 64 Chevy out, or my 64 Chrysler out to Nickawind, here where I live now, at the golf course in White Rock, and parked my car here, and we got the T-Bird, and we went across the border, and I'd booked a room at the Skagit Hotel. It's a casino hotel down past Bellingham. And I had a bottle of German wine. We hadn't been drinking up to that time again after the summer boat. That was a year later after we'd been baptized, after that houseboat trip. But we decided we'd drink on our honeymoon, so I got a bottle of German wine, and we went down to Skagit, and we went upstairs. We had a beautiful room, and we went down, and I think we gambled a little bit, drank our bottle of nice German wine, then we went and had steak and crab for dinner, steak Oscar, I guess it was. And the next day we left and drove down the Oregon coast to a place called Sunnyside, where there was a motel there. And we had happened to hit there on a long weekend, which was like super busy. It was so packed there. It's a resort town, and I remember going across the big bridge at Astoria. We went down that way. They got this huge, long bridge. It's one of the longest bridges ever. And we'd gone to Astoria and then down into Sunnyside. And then, so we finally found a place right on the beach at Sunnyside that had a room, but we went in the room, and it was like a crappy room at the back of the motel, and the door was all loose. It had been jimmied or something. So Marsha said, she said, well, heck with it, we're not taking that. So she phoned up the desk, and she complained, so they upgraded us and gave us a beautiful room right on the front with this big balcony overlooking the ocean. And we got pictures of us with our hands up in the air with our wedding rings on and everything. And I don't know, we sat and drank wine. We drank wine all the time on those trips. And then we went down the next day to, I guess, Lincoln City. Went through there. We ended up going down to Newport. We might have stayed overnight in Lincoln City, too. We took our time, sort of went through Tullamac, and then we ended up in Newport. We were going to go to Newport, and as we were coming toward Newport, we passed this place, and Marsha said, "Oh, look at that place we just passed. That looks like a nice place." I said, "Wow, well, let's keep going. We're just about at Newport." And then I thought, well, what the heck, we're on our honeymoon. Let's turn around. So I turned around. We went back. It was called the Moolock Shores, and it's up on a sort of a cliff above this long beach. It's like a park there. There's a park next door to it, and we'd stopped at this other place that had been up the mountain. It was a lookout where they were selling stuff, and it was such a nice area. There was really nothing around this motel. There's no houses or nothing very close, and so it's like sort of out in the wilderness, just before the city limits, and it was beautiful. It was an old rustic place. They even had VHS movies that you could play, and each room was done in a different theme. You know, like we had the Hollywood room that time, and there's all kinds of different rooms with themes in them anyway. And so we had the Hollywood room. We went in there, and there's pictures of Frank Sinatra, Marilyn Monroe, and all this stuff. And there's a little fireplace with a fire log. And so Marsha, we started having some wine, and Frank and Yvette ran that place. I remember Yvette used to come over and drink with us in later years. But anyway, we had some wine, and we were so excited and everything. And Marsha said, "Let's go for a swim." I went, "Okay." So we gets our bathing suits on and goes down these long stairs. There's a bunch of wooden stairs, like 2 or 3 flights that go down to the ocean from the cliff. Went down there and jumped in the damn ocean. It was so freezing cold and windy. Marsha just about froze. "Oh, let's get out of here." So we went up the stairs again and got in, lit the fireplace up, had some wine, ordered a pizza. And I think the next day we drove further down the Oregon coast. We went down that Oregon coast about 4 or 5 times and stayed at that same motel. And we stay for a week at a time sometimes. We'd go down and go to Depot Bay. We'd go to Moe's for it's a restaurant. There's 2 or 3 of them down there. They have really great clam and chowder. We had their oysters a couple of times. Raw ones once, yuck. And fried ones once, yuck again, for me anyway. But it's nice down there, Depot Bay and all these places. So we did a lot. We went even to the Ripley's, believe it or not, in Newport, and went through there. And there's all kinds of neat stuff to look at in those places. And, T-shirt shops and everything. And there used to be more trips we went down there. I remember there was a guy named Ronnie used to stay in. We started getting a place on the front of the motel with a balcony, and Ronnie would stay there. Next to us, this guy from somewhere, I forget where, but he used to go down every year, and he'd put a towel up to keep the wind off. He'd be sitting out on the balcony, and he told us about this big, huge tree that was way down somewhere down the coast. It was the biggest spruce around or something. So we went down there one day, and we went on this trail. We hiked and hiked and hiked and hiked. Marsha got so tired. She was in pretty good shape too, but we were still not there. So finally we thought, heck with it. Marsha was getting too tired. I was getting worried about her. So I looked across the river. I seen this road. I said, there's a road across there on the other side of the river. And then we found out later, people just drive up the other side of the river to park up there and walk across this bridge to the tree. Anyway, we should have done our homework a little bit better. And I remember one time we were down there. Yvette was Frank, the owners, Frank and Yvette. He didn't like her to drink because she liked drinking too much. And one time Ronnie put a party for us down there, and when we were leaving. So he had all these big, huge prawns and everything that he bought fresh, and he cooked them all up. And Yvette came over, and he was mixing up margaritas, and she didn't even eat. She just kept drinking. And Frank, I don't know where he was. He didn't like her to drink anyway. But when me and Marsha went back to the room, we heard knock, knock, knock on the door, and it's Yvette. She said, "Oh, come on in, we'll give you a wine or two." And so she came in. She kept marveling about Marsha's legs, how smooth they were and nice. I remember she kept feeling Marsha's legs. She wasn't a lesbian or nothing, just that Marsha's skin is so beautiful. And then one time we went on a trip down to Jonathan's graduation, when he graduated from college or something. And we went down there, and we also went down another time for Hannah's wedding, when Hannah got married to Tommy Dunn, and she had this big wedding outside at this church up in this mountain, up in Hollywood, or I don't know, somewhere in L.A., and it was a beautiful wedding with all kinds of nice clothes. Marsha had a little black dress, and we stayed at a motel that time. Oh, I guess it was when Jonathan had his graduation, back to that, when we stayed at Lynn and... Oh, no, that was a different time again. Sorry. We went to Jonathan's graduation, then went to Hannah's wedding. While we were at the wedding, this outdoor wedding, and they were performing the ceremony, all of a sudden all these helicopters and everything started showing up really close. And they were noisy. You could hardly hear the minister. And they were all hovering around, and that's when this train had crashed in Los Angeles. It killed, I think, 100 people or something like that. The guy had been texting on his stupid phone driving the train and missed a signal and went right in and got hit by another train. It was like a huge disaster. And I remember after we went up, I was with Brian, and I don't know where Marsha was driving with somebody else, went up to a party somewhere up where they had a reception for Hannah. It was a really nice reception, and I remember Brian speeding like crazy on the highway. I didn't really like the driving too good, but he knew his way around, I guess so. And then we went, another time me and Marsha decided we were going to... I got a bunch of money back from some kind of I don't know what, they hadn't been paying me my pensions properly. And they gave me about $10,000, so I bought a computer, a new computer, and then I spent the rest of the money on, we took a big holiday in the T-Bird. We decided to go on it's about a 3-week holiday. We went down to Redding, California, and then over to Santa Cruz, down through, can never remember that town. It's just out of L.A. on the beach. We down the Big Sur. I always thought the Big Sur was a flat beach, but it's all mountains down there. Marsha was freaked right out because it's all, windy road and everything. If I remember the name of that other town we stopped at, it's a famous name. But anyway, we got down to Lynn and Brian's in Los Angeles, and Hannah had been married and gone by then, and Jonathan had left, or maybe Jonathan was still there. He ended up working for Rhino Records, who handles all the Grateful Dead stuff, and Jonathan's a good artist also. But anyway, we stayed up in Hannah's bedroom, and we went out somewhere. Lynn didn't want us to drink, so I don't blame her in a way, but we were drinking in those days. But anyway, we went out somewhere for dinner or something, and then we came back to Lynn and Brian's, and they had this damn pit bull dog, and it was a horrible dog, because the day before when me and Marsha were there, Lynn and Brian went somewhere, and me and Marsha were sitting on that couch, and that dog jumped up on Brian's chair and sat there watching us the whole time. I was terrified of the thing. And I'd heard it had cornered Marsha once too, and it cornered Lynn. He used to think Lynn was his wife, the dog, I think, because, I heard he was always sniffing around Lynn, and I don't know, the dog used to sleep upstairs in the bedroom with Lynn and Brian, and they had, I think, a chihuahua and a cat and all this, but that dog there, we came back from a party once, and that dog jumped up and tried to bite me. It bit my shirt. And when I went to the fridge to get something, and Brian gave it heck, and then years later, I think he got it put down because it's too dangerous. Those things are unpredictable. And anyway, we went up to sleep that night. We thought, let's go to get out here. And after the dog tried to bite me, went up and we slept overnight. And I woke up about 4 a.m. I said, Marsha, let's get the hell out of here, and let's not even have a shower. We'll just get your clothes, pack your suitcase, I'll pack mine. And so we got ready. I got to the bedroom door, and I say, okay, you ready? Yeah, okay. Out that door, because the dog was sleeping down the hall in the damn bedroom. So we were down those stairs, out that door, and away we went. And they said later, where did you guys go so early? I said, I couldn't stay there with that damn dog. So after that, we went to Palm Springs. A lot of windmills there. I couldn't see anything in Palm Springs that impressed me, but we just sort of drove around. There didn't seem to be much of a downtown. It's mostly like a retirement community, I guess, with, golf courses and all that. So then we went out through the flats of Arizona, got some pictures of us by cactuses, all these big cactuses. They got bird holes. Birds make nests in them, I guess. And there were some neat old buildings, like old rustic cowboy buildings we seen. And then we went up through the mountains where they got these really neat rocks. There's a little town up there. I forget what it's called. We stopped there, and I seen it was actually an Indian artifact for $150 in this little store up there. But the rocks are kind of these big, huge rocks that look sort of almost like those Mayan rocks down in South America that are all pieced together. But these are natural. But there was a big axe head in there that was like a stone with, you could see where they'd wrapped the rope around or something to make it. I should have bought the damn thing. I tried to phone down there a year later and find out about it, but I could never find where it was. Anyway, I went from there and drove along, and then we went down through this sort of a steep hill with switchbacks all the way down through this place called Jerome, where there's a haunted hotel there. It's like an old mining town up on the mountain. It's really neat there with all these old buildings, rustic buildings and hotel and stuff. And we went through there. We walked around a little bit. We should have stayed overnight there, but we didn't. You can see the whole valley down below, this beautiful view. And then we went from there through down to Sedona, which has got all the red rocks. John McCain lives there. Apparently they see a lot of UFOs around there. And we went to this place where they have a church up in the rocks, this red church, or like the red rocks. And some of the rocks look like, like people. And then they got this, I call it Nipple Mountain. It looks like a big, sticks up with a kind of a funny little top on the thing. And then we drove around there, and we stayed actually 2 nights there in Sedona. It was so beautiful. And then we drove up through this canyon park where there's a river along its, I should know the names of these places, but it was beautiful down there. So we drove up through there, and finally we got to, where were we at? Oh, I know, we went through Gallup, New Mexico. We got into New Mexico after Sedona, I guess, and then we went through Gallup, and Gallup had an old hotel there. I got a folder for it if you look it up on the internet. It's a very old hotel in Gallup. I forget who owns it now. I think maybe the native Indians own it. But anyway, all the movie stars used to stay there. Errol Flynn, James Cagney, Doris Day, everybody you can think of stayed at that hotel. And they used to make a lot of Western movies around there. John Wayne, and a lot of the rooms have names on them, and there's a big rock fireplace. It was it's made of logs, if I remember correctly. And then we went to Albuquerque after that and stayed in Albuquerque. And we went to the old town. I think I told this story before, but we went to the old town and looked around, and it was really neat there. They had these, I forget what those flowers are, those big tall flowers, but there was a lot of them growing around there, and these old adobe style buildings, and it's sort of really Mexican looking, It was really Spanish, Very neat there. And then we decided to go to the museum, and we loved the food there. It was like, tortillas and all this Mexican food. And then we went to the museum and went through there, and they had a display about Billy the Kid in there. They had handwritten letters that he'd written to the governor. He was a smart guy. He was educated, you know. People think of him as some dumb cowboy kid, but no. And the Lincoln Wars had been there, and they actually had Pat Garrett's gun that killed Billy the Kid, and they had the bed that he'd laid on, where they laid his body on, I guess after he'd died or something. The bed was there, and anyway, all these handwritten letters. And while we're there, we seen they had a pearl-handled gun there, one of Wild Bill Hickok's guns, who's always been one of my sort of cowboy heroes. And we thought, wow. And then we thought, because we didn't really know where we were going. We were going to go to Monument Valley, and then we decided to go up to Deadwood. That's where Wild Bill's buried. So anyway, from Albuquerque, we went up to Santa Fe. I loved Santa Fe. They had a little square downtown that people sold stuff. I bought a silver pick from an Indian guy down there. And we went for breakfast down there. We had, I know I told this story before in one of my early ones. We had tortillas and stuffed peppers with cheese in them, and refried beans and everything for breakfast. And we stayed 2 nights in Santa Fe because we went to the oldest church in Santa Fe. In the States, I think it's very, very old, with a hand-painted, you know, the altar's got this big wall, all hand-painted, very old, eh? And then we went to one of the reasons we wanted to go there is the Loretto Church, where they got this spiral staircase that was built by they don't know who built it. The nuns didn't have a staircase to get up to the balcony where they wanted to have the choir, and they'd prayed and prayed and prayed, and they didn't have any money. And one day this old guy showed up on a donkey with this wood, and he built this spiral. It's got 3 twists in it, I think, to go up to the balcony, and it's got no nails and no supporting pole, nothing to support it. How it stands there, I don't know. And it had no railings. The thing is unbelievable. And this guy had built this thing, and years later, they don't even know where the wood came from. It wasn't local, and he'd built this whole thing, and he'd left, never asked for any money or nothing. They don't know who he was. Years later, they thought he was some guy from France or something, but they had to name the wood that he used. They call it the Loretto spruce, after the church name. And years later, they put railings on the church because the nuns were terrified going up it with no railings. But it really looked the best with no railings. And so we'd gone there, and we stayed 2 nights in. There's also a sort of a haunted house there or something, I heard. Then we went from Santa Fe up through this little town that's got I forget what it's called. It's got an Indian village that's famous. We didn't go into it. We sort of looked in the gate. But we were on our way. We were going up to Cimarron, New Mexico, where they have the St. James Hotel. And the St. James Hotel, years later, I'd been watching TV, and when I lived in the Beach Towers, and they had Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack on, and they'd shown this hotel register of this haunted hotel where some guy had been shot there and his ghost had been in there, and there'd been people seen another little ghost of a little boy in the bar at one time, but this ghost is, apparently people had seen these balls of light or something in this room and all this stuff. And this guy had been in a card game or something. He'd been shot, and it was number 18, the room, and that was his ghost. And so we wanted to go see this because the hotel registrar, when they showed it on the Unsolved Mystery, said Robert Stepp from Springer, New Mexico. And that's the same spelling as my name. So I was thrilled because there's no Stepps up in Harley in Canada. I did see a film lately of the Stepp brothers, the 4 black guys, though. But Stepps go way, 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 way back. And, you know, Moses Stepp was a frontiersman and they go way back in history to the 1635 when they landed from England. But anyway, so we went, stayed there. We stayed in the governor's room, and they had the Annie Oakley room, the Buffalo Bill room, the Clay Allison, he was a gunslinger too, and of course Wyatt Earp and his brother used to stay there. The Lincoln chef started that hotel after Lincoln was assassinated. It was like a fancy hotel off the Santa Fe Trail. People used to stop there and stay overnight. And the bullet holes are still in the ceiling. We met a guy named Dwayne Shell there that had been in cowboy movies, and he was like a real cowboy that would go out on the range for months at a time with the cows, and he brought down the arrowheads and showed us and all this stuff. And so we stayed there for a couple of nights, or maybe just one night, I can't remember, but it was so neat, that place. We went through the museum also there, but we ended up sitting in the bar for quite a while with Dwayne Shell and drinking and talking about cowboy stuff, and he'd been in a couple of movies. And then we went up to we were staying in the governor's room. I got a picture of Marsha sitting in front of the fireplace. And then we drank a bunch of wine, went down, knocked on the ghost door that they keep a padlock on, but we never seen any ghosts. They got an old roulette wheel in there. It's a neat hotel, and it's really nice. And then we drove down through this big canyon going down, back down from the mountain. It's up in the mountains, that place. And we went down, decided to go up to Deadwood, so we went up through Cheyenne, and it was so windy up there. In fact, they got these log things they build out in the fields for the cows to hide behind in the winter, I guess, to keep the wind off them. And we got up to, finally got to Deadwood up in the Black Hills, and they had, we got a hotel there. It was like an old hotel in a brick building. It was really nice. Deadwood, it's like a mining town, and it's mountainous around there, and steep hills. They got Boot Hill up there, and so we went up there and stopped there, and the next day, or we went to Kevin Costner's got a casino there. We went there, and Marsha won $300, and then we went down to, we looked at where Wild Bill Hickok had been killed. It's down in a basement because apparently that town burnt down once and it got built up after that, so there's not much of the original town there, but the basement downstairs is the original level where he'd actually got shot. And they got dummies are sitting around this table and a guy shooting them and that kind of stuff. And then we went over to the casino. I remember me and Marsha got in a big fight that night because she got jealous about some girls or something. That happened a lot. Every holiday we went in and got ruined somehow. She used to imagine things that weren't true. She started doing that back then a little bit, but only when she drank, it would be like, I kept always telling her, don't be jealous, Marsha. I love you. I don't want anybody else. But she would, in later years, she would start, I'll get into that later, she would imagine things that weren't happening, but that was before she went to the hospital. So anyway, we had a real nice room there, and we went up and seen Crazy Horse, that mountain, where they were carving the big statue of Crazy Horse. That's something else. That they had the head finished and the face, and they got a museum there. So we went up and looked at that. We took some pictures. Then we went to Mount Rushmore, looked at that, and that was pretty neat too. We got some pictures there to actually stand there, because my mom that had been one of my mom's dreams to go to Mount Rushmore, and she'd finally made it at one time. And on our way, there was a lot of things we should have stopped at, but they're off the highway 30, 40 miles. The petrified forest, we should have stopped, went in there, where the Little Bighorn, where Custer's Last Stand. It's just a big flat prairie there. But one place I wish we would have went was Devil's Tower, where they did that movie, what was it, E.T. or no, Encounters of the Third Kind. That's a really neat looking mountain, that thing. It's like a huge tree stump or something, only real huge. Then we went down through Sturgis after we left Edwood, where the bikers all go. But that place is like a little town with nothing in it, because the bikers weren't there. And then we stopped at a little town somewhere, and we went down to a bar. We got a motel, went down to a bar, and I played the piano a little bit. And then we sat at the bar, and Marsha's, we're going to get something to eat. She said, "Oh, they got oysters here." I said, "Oh, they do? Out in the prairies here?" "Yeah, oysters." I look at the menu, it says prairie oysters. I said, "Oh, I don't think you want to order those, Marsha. They're bull's balls, steer's balls. And they cook them up, prairie oysters, as bad as road apples." Then we drove back through Coeur d'Alene, and we stopped at Winthrop. It's an old western town. It was really neat. That place is just fixed up like a cute little western town. And up through the Snohomish Paths. That was nice. And we saw some of the big dam down in the mountains. You can see it way down the pass. Very rugged, those mountains, beautiful mountains. And then we came back down through, I think we stayed at the Skagit Hotel when we came back through. There's a little town, I can't remember, I should have looked up the name. It was a little town we used to stay at near Skagit Hotel, where you could smoke in it. Well, I think we were smoking. We used to smoke sometimes because we liked the American cigarettes, you know. And I think I better take a little break here and continue. Okay, continuing on with about our life with Marsha. The little town we used to go down to sometimes near the Skagit was called Alger. And there was a motel there we used to stay in. I got pictures of us staying there. You could get a smoking room there, and it was a lot cheaper than the Skagit. And there was, you know, you could buy booze from the little garage up the road, and cigarettes were cheap. And then there was a little neighborhood pub there we used to order food at. We used to go over there and sit and watch the bands and stuff like that. It was kind of fun. And then we took a trip. Trips that we took were, we went on the houseboat again one time together. We went up to Sicamous again. And another time we went up on I rented a motorboat, a speedboat, and we went up the lake together and went all the way up to Seymour Arm, which I'd never even been to when I was a kid. And it was kind of a bay, Seymour Arm. I couldn't see very much there, though. I thought it would be a lot more impressive, but there used to be an old house up there that I heard about when I was a kid. I couldn't really see it either. Some English couple had built it. It was like a really nice place. But we didn't go and dock and walk around. We just sort of drove in the bay and looked around. And then we went back because we only had the boat for the speedboat for 4 hours, and it's about 25 miles up that lake or something. And we stopped and looked at the Indian paintings and some stuff like that. Marsha had discovered Indian paintings at Swall Bay when we stayed there. We took one other houseboat trip up there together where we stayed at Swall Bay, which is a little park that Donna told us about. It's across from the Narrows. And I'd worked at the houseboat store there. And so we'd stayed there the second time on the houseboat by ourselves this time. But we were so freaked out. It was so dark up there and scary. We kept thinking about Sasquatches and cougars and all kinds. We had the doors all locked, and we had a nice time, though. We went hiking up the mountain a little bit, went skinny dipping, and laid on the rocks naked, got my balls burned. And I went and lost my only fishing hook. I went diving for it the next day, couldn't find it. Marsha took a picture of me with no clothes on except my mask. I got a picture of that somewhere, and sitting on the chair somewhere with nothing on. And anyway, we had a nice time that time, but it was kind of freaky up there because I thought if something happens to Marsha or me, there's no doctors, you know. You got a two-way radio, and those houseboats, you know, they have to keep watching out how many times you flush the toilet. You got to start it up to keep the batteries charged, and so anyway. But being up the lake was wonderful. Marsha discovered these Indian paintings up there that I've got pictures of, and they were sort of under a rock. They weren't even listed in the Sicamous list of Indian paintings, so that was a nice trip up there. And we used to stay at a motel in Sicamous and visit my sister and stuff like that. It's nice up there in the summer. Then we took a trip to Nelson once. Stayed at the, I know I've repeated this before. We stayed at the Hume Hotel, and it's the old hotel in Nelson, down on Baker Street. And we went up to View Street and found my old house up there where I'd lived. And I'd phoned my old teacher. I found her name somehow. I don't know how I found it. Miss Hopwood. I guess when that was her name when, I know she married the vice principal of the Hume School. I guess it was the Hume School I went to. The Hume family had been big there, I guess. Anyway, I went to elementary at that school, Hume School. We went to the school and took pictures of the school. Because when I was a kid there, they used to divide the playground up front, girls on one side, boys on the other, and then you'd have to line up on the sidewalk that went up to the front door and walk up in pairs to go back to your rooms. So we went up to View Street and looked around there, and Nelson's really a neat town, a lot of old buildings, and we went from there down through Weimar, which has got the old hotel there still. I forget what it's called, but it's nothing that much in Weimar. That's where they had the old restaurant Slump's Dump. I told all these stories on my earlier thing about growing up, but then we went through Castlegar and down around and stayed in Osoyoos. We used to stay in Osoyoos quite a bit. We went up there 2 or 3 times too, and we stayed in I think it was called the Fiesta Motel or something, or some name like that, right on the beach. It's so hot up there in the summer and dry and beautiful. We used to buy all these, you know, beefsteak tomatoes and cucumbers, and go back to the motel and make sandwiches. We had a little kitchen unit, you know, the fridge and everything, and sit and have our wine, go down to the beach and swim, and go up to there's an Indian reserve up there with a sort of a museum and a winery. We'd go up there and look around, drive around. I love that area. And so another time we went out to up to Edmonton, Highvale, and I took Marsha all the way up and drove all the way up the Yellowhead Pass. And traffic was just awful. It took us 13 or 14 hours to drive up there. We were so tired and owly by the time we got there. We got a motel. We drove into Highvale. We couldn't find any. There's nothing in Tomahawk except an old, kind of not even a hotel. It's just a bar with empty rooms upstairs. And so we had to turn around and drive back about 30 miles to get a motel, and we stayed there. And so we stayed at the motel, and then we went the next day driving around Highvale trying to find Marsha's old house. We found the barn finally, but we never found the graveyard of her parents. We should have really stopped and phoned John, but we never did. I went through this on one of my earlier things, but it was nice to Marsha. She found where some of the people up there used to live that she knew. Some of the farms, like can't offhand remember the names. The Caldoons was her mother, but there was another family up there. We went there. Another time we went up to Yale, a couple of times to Yale, just out of Vancouver here, and stayed at a motel up there. It's nice up there, and went through the museum. There's an old piano in the museum. I never played that one, but it's like a real antique. And then they got a camp. They got it set up like the old mining camps up there from the gold rush days. It's part of the museum with these tents with one's like for the Chinese workers. There used to be 30,000 people or something lived in Yale at one time. When the gold rush was on, they were building the railroad up there. So, and there was even a Catholic convent up there full of nuns, and it was quite the place. We liked Yale a lot, and we used to sit around here in the living room. They were selling a trailer up there once in a trailer park for $25,000. We owned the land, has an outdoor pool, the caretaker for $25 a month, and it was like a 2-bedroom trailer or something with a porch and everything. If I'd had the money, I should have bought the darn thing, because now they're building a ski hill up there. I think I'm repeating stuff I said in earlier things here, but anyway, in case I didn't say it, I'm doing it. And me and Marcia used to collect a lot of rocks, and we took a holiday every summer, and she's so wonderful, Marcia started getting memory problems later on, but we had probably 10 good years together, or actually more than that. We've been 2020 now. We've been together since 2003, and that's when I met her. We got married and baptized 2004, got married in 2006, I guess, or something. And we had many, many nice times together. We had lots of fights, too. Lynn can attest to that, but all drinking, that's the thing. Marcia would, she would get drinking, and then she'd flip out somehow and, go on these big tears. I'd get scared of her, and have to lock myself in the bathroom. And we were both drinking, though. I'd be laying in the bathroom on a sleeping bag, still drinking. She'd be out running, going around the house yelling and whatever. That's too bad, but anyway, she used to imagine, like, oh, you were screwing a neighbor out in the parking lot. I go, what? Of course I wasn't, and then she'd get mad, but she'd go from like normal to just a flip like that. And then, the neighbor's daughter up against the house, and every holiday we went on, something happened like that. It was like imagining things that, I never fooled around on her ever. But anyway, that's a minuscule part of our whole thing. Lynn used to get fed up because I didn't know what to do, and I'd phone Lynn. But later on, Marcia started doing that when she wasn't drinking. Like we were driving along in the car one day. This is before she ended up in the hospital. And she goes, "Where's Lynn?" I said, "What do you mean? She's in Los Angeles, honey." "No, she's not. She was just in the back seat." I said, "No." And then she got mad and started hitting me and scratching me. And at that time, I'd driven to the cop shop, and she stopped. But then it started getting at the mall. She'd go in the bathroom, and I would go, how long has she been in there? She'd get lost in there, I guess. But, I had to argue with her every morning to take her pills. My doctor's not here. My doctor's in Los Angeles. I don't have a doctor. I said, "No, honey, you got a doctor here." And then she started passing out. Maybe she was just overtired, but she passed out 2 or 3 times in Walmart, and once at the fair, at one of these country markets, where she'd pass out, sort of seize up and pass out, and then maybe there were many strokes or something, and then she'd wake up and say, "Oh no, I'm okay," and but this is just in the last few years this happened. But before that, it was wonderful, and she's still wonderful. I mean, I love her so much, and she is so beautiful. I can't wait to see her every day when I go there. So anything, everybody goes through ups and downs and problems here and there, and that's just one little quirk of her personality. But she was good up until about the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, even though she'd get jealous sometimes, but a lot of women do that, so it ruins a lot of marriages. And but we, all the nice times we had together and putting our arms around each other, we still, it's a really special love that I have for her and she has for me. I think, we love to be together, and I put my arms around her all the time still and kiss her and hug her, and I'm, since she went to the hospital, my heart breaks the time I, actually phoned to get an ambulance, but she was starting to get up in the middle of the night wanting me to drive her to this house where her mother lived, and there was no house. I drove her a couple of times, and she'd want to wander out, and did you kill our kids? Where's our kids? Stuff like that. And she'd be waking up and couldn't sleep. I was taking her to all my jobs, and she'd start dumping sugar in the flowers, and things that people do, when they get dementia. And finally one night when I'd been up all night trying to reason with her about looking for her mom's house and all this, I think I'd phoned Lynn, and Lynn said, you should phone the ambulance, Richard, maybe you can get help. I'm sorry the day I ever did, but I guess it's probably was the right thing to do, because it would have just keep getting worse. I couldn't get any sleep. I couldn't work. It was getting to the point where I couldn't take her to the jobs, or what am I going to do? And then I remember when I phoned the ambulance, she was sitting at the table and she said, you just drove a knife through my heart. Oh, my God. Two things that hurt me in my life was that statement, and when Jesse had said to me, when I'd broken up with Lisa, Dad, I thought I was going to have a happy life. That killed me too. But anyway, so anyway, I'm still hanging in there. Marsha's still hanging in. She's been sick. Well, she's going downhill, I guess, but I love her to death. That's what when I put my hand on the Bible, said we'd been married to forever together. It's the truth, and I go visit her all day, every day. We have a lot of nice times together still, so, and she's, but I miss her like crazy, so that's all I can think of for now. Thank you. Oh yeah, I forgot two funny things about Marsha, my wife. When she was going to marry me, she told me she went to the doctor to ask the doctor, how can I keep him happy? She had a female doctor at the time. What can I do to make him feel good and everything? And she said, well, the doctor told her, just play with him a lot. And I remember, this is another funny, Marsha's sense of humor. When we used to fool around, she'd say, hey, where did you get that thing? Or, whoa, where did that thing come from? Okay, I've already talked about my kids quite a bit, but this is a little section on them. Chelsea Mara, my daughter, she was born in May 29th, 1978, and Jesse was born on May 25th, 1980. I remember a little story once. I think first time Lisa told me she was pregnant, I kind of went, oh no, because my career was just taken off and holiday in Hollywood. I wasn't sad about it because we were both trying to, we sort of quit doing the birth control thing, and we kind of wanted to have a kid anyway. So anyway, I'm so glad anyway. Chelsea's such a beautiful little girl, and Jesse a beautiful little boy. And I had a lot of fun with my kids. I loved them so much. And they're both about, right now in 2020, they're going to be, Jesse will be 40 and Chelsea will be 42, for gosh sakes. Anyway, when they were little, we were living at Dogwood Street back then, and we had a lot of fun out in the backyard, and we used to take them for walks with the neighborhood kids, and Jesse had a little friend next door. I forget his name, a funny little guy. Anyway, I had my little studio back there. They used to come in and sing with me sometimes. I had drums and everything set up there, and Jesse singing, "You drive me crazy." And then we also at the Christmas party, I explained a lot of this earlier, singing that one about, "Where did my baby go? I don't know, she went to Idaho." And anyway, they used to go up to Sycamoose to visit Nana all the time in the summer. I just wanted to put this chapter to tell my kids how much I love them with all my heart. So very much. It broke my heart when me and Lisa split up, because, you know, they're the love of my life, those little kids, and to have to not have your kids after, you know, having them when they were little and doing all the fun things we did together, and then all of a sudden you're by yourself again. Jesse says, "I thought I was going to have a happy life." Poor little guy. I remember one time when I went to pick him up after me and Lisa split up, some guy was staying overnight at the house. Man, was I pissed off. My clothes were still in the closet. I guess she was taking her revenge out on me or something. Who knows? But that's an ugly thing to do. Anyway, that really made me mad. I took my kids in the car and got partway home, and I couldn't stand it. I turned around, took them back to the house. Gee, those are sad days. Anyway, we had a lot of happy times. So that gold bracelet I got made for Lisa way up in the Charlotte's my first trip up. Seen Chelsea wearing it one day, so after we'd split up, so I took it back anyway. But after we'd split up, I used to take my drums out, and my Ludwig drums, and Jessie lived upstairs with and Papa. I guess Chelsea had gone downtown. She had an apartment down near City Hall for a while, and she was taking sign language courses, and she had a boyfriend down there. And she got pregnant and had an abortion, which I advised her not to do. I don't believe in abortion, and I wish she would never have done that. But anyway, what's done's done. And so, and anyway, Jesse was coming in to live with me at one time, but he came in for a little bit, but then he went back home because he didn't feel like paying rent, and I don't blame him. And there was, you know, he'd have to get a job. He was better off where he was. So, but we used to do a lot of jamming together. I'd go out to the house and jam, and my drums were out there, and he was partying up there with all these girls and guys. Jesus, because they were doing a lot of dope smoking and everything. But when I was working on the cruise ships, I remember when I came in once to go see the kids. Jesse had an old guitar. Lisa told me he'd been playing guitar, so I went and rented him a Fender Stratocaster, and I only rented it for him. Told him if he liked it, he might as well learn on a good one, and he still got that guitar. He actually paid for it himself and worked at the fish and chip shop. One thing I'll say about Jesse, man, he's a hard worker, and he's always worked. You know, I can't believe that guy. You know, he went through drugs and everything, and I was hoping like crazy he wouldn't fall the other way, because, you know, I haven't been exactly the best example in the world. I'm kind of an alcoholic myself a bit, and a drug addict a bit throughout the years, but I managed to survive too. I don't know about Chelsea. Jesse got a couple of tattoos, though. I don't really like tattoos, but Chelsea was in ballet. Chelsea's such a beautiful girl, man, oh man. She got a smile. You know, every picture I've ever had of her, she takes a good picture. Jesse's got a little bit of a grumpy look in some of his pictures, but he's so cute too. God, I love my kids. Anyway, everybody goes through things up and down in their life, you know. But they used to love going up to Nana's in the summertime and staying up there, and the old Baradoozy lived next door. I'm just bringing up some memories. They loved old Baradoozy, the old guy. I told you once before, me and Jesse smoked a joint with him once. He's 80-something years old, and he used to eat these hot peppers all the time, but he loved the kids, and they loved him, and they loved being with Nana. She'd take him down to the beach every day, and they'd go for swimming, and I think they took swimming lessons and all that kind of stuff down there, and they had a lot of fun up there. I told them all about Willie Wump Wump one time when they were up there. We went camping in Kelowna that time when I played there for 5 weeks. I got to camp out with the kids, so that was lots of fun. So, but when I took them out once Halloween up in Sicamous, we waited till it got dark and got flashlights. Willie Wump Wump was the guy that had lived back at the swamp and never talked to anybody. He was like a kind of a hobo. And they'd let him build a little house back in the bush in this people's property, and because he kept to himself and everything. But the house had burned down, so I took the kids one night. We were going to go look for the ghost of Willie Wump Wump. We went in the bush, and we were walking around with the flashlight. I'd make a little bit of a noise. Oh, is that him? Anyway, they used to come up to Nana's all the time. I remember one time we were up there with Jesse, and a storm started coming in. He said, "Oh, Dad, let's go outside and watch the storm." I said, "Well, yeah, okay," because I know the storms in Shuswap Lake are real deadly. I've seen houseboats washed up, and you can get a storm on that lake come up in, 10 minutes, man. It's really fierce. And so we went out in the parking lot, and this big storm came in, and all the trees started blowing and the dust all over, and Jesse goes, "Let's get in." Reminds me of the time I was in Penticton staying at West's place, and the big storm came in, and I threatened I dare you to strike me with lightning or something. I said, and all of a sudden a big lightning bolt hit a tree near me. Scared the hell out of me. I went right back into that house. I swear that old house where West was living had ghosts in it too. I could hear everything creaking, footsteps, and Anyway, my kids were both born in St. Paul's. I can't remember if I was at Jesse's birth, but I was at Chelsea's birth for sure. I should have been at Jesse's if I wasn't. I think maybe I was away. I don't know. It's too bad because you should always be there. I whistled for Chelsea when she first came into the world. That's the first thing she heard was I whistled a little tune. One thing I got to tell you, though, I actually saved the kids' lives once. We were driving home to Sicamous in the station wagon. I was taking them up to Nana's place, and we got up past Kamloops up by Monty Creek, and I looked up. I'm always watching out for other cars, like defensive driving, and we were driving along. It's a 2-lane highway, cars coming toward us. And there's a steep hill coming down. They've changed it now, but it used to come down from Falkland to the Trans-Canada Highway. And I saw this truck, it was like a dump truck or something, coming down the hill with his brakes smoking like crazy. And I was going along, and it was like this decision to make. What to do? Try to jam on the brakes, and he's going to hit you, or gun it, and he might not hit you. And boy, I made the split-second decision and gunned it and whipped over into the other passing lane. Thank God there was no car coming, or I would have had to drive off the road or something. I don't know, but he just missed the rear end of our car. Whew, and he went off and down into the ditch. And we kept going. I didn't even stop. I guess I should have, but there were other cars coming, so I had cars behind me, too. I couldn't stop. Someone would have stopped going the other way. But anyway, I remember one time when we were staying at Nana's trailer, and Jesse and his friend Carl came up. And I used to let them smoke, and they got away with murder, those kids. And I got really pissed off at them because, they were sitting in there smoking all the time. And I went over and I looked beside the couch where they sit, and the chair that one guy sat in, and they've been spitting on the floor. There was like snot all over the floor. I got so mad at them, I kicked them out of the house. Said, "You get out! How dare you do that in Nana's house?" And so they went down and I told them to go sleep on the beach. Well, Sycamoose, I knew it's not dangerous there, so. But anyway, they went down to Donna's. Donna's was probably pretty disgusted. And anyway, Nana paid for our whole trip down to Disneyland once after me and Lisa had split up with Jesse and me and Chelsea. And then I think it was maybe Donna and Andre and Terry. I think we all went down to Disneyland. And I bought a Star Wars, a Darth Vader helmet for Jesse down there, but apparently Chelsea lent it. Somebody got lost. And then I paid for a limo ride for him around Vancouver one time. But a lot of these things I've mentioned before in my talks here, but I just want the kids to know from their dad, sorry I wasn't such a great dad sometimes, and I'm very sorry me and Lisa ever split up, because that hurt my heart. Probably it hurt your heart too, so I'm still suffering from it. But anyway, I love you with all my heart, and I always will. And what can I say? You're the light of my life. I forgot to mention once with the kids, Jesse used to want to drive my car. Like, I used to let him, my dad used to move over and let me drive on the truck that we had when I was a kid. So I used to let Jesse drive around a little bit. On a back road or something, I'd get him out, and I'd let him drive to learn him how to drive. So he, one time I was drinking quite a bit, and we were at the trailer staying. He was staying with me, and I decided I wanted to go get some more cider. And so the neighborhood pub was just right across the street, really. You just go out to the road from the trailer court and down about a quarter of a block and turn into the liquor store. So I said, well, you can drive, because I've been drinking. So he gets behind the wheel, and we drive over to the neighborhood pub. I go in, my cousin Al's working in there, Al Robert. He's the bartender, so I buy a big cider, one of these big bottles of cider like they are, and they come in the big, whatever, 2-liter pops or something. Anyway, I buy a cider, and when I come out, the cops are out the front, and Jesse's standing outside the car. He'd been sitting in the car. Cops had him out standing up by the driver store, and they're questioning him and asking him his age and all this stuff. And then they said, are you his dad? And I said, yeah, I let him drive because I've been drinking. So they ended up giving him a ticket, and then they took my cider away from me. And I guess we left the car there and walked back to the trailer, to Mom's trailer. And then I think Papa ended up paying his ticket for him, because he was living with Amma and Papa then, him and Chelsea. And I got phoned over to my nephew Al and got him to bring me another bottle of cider. So that's just a little footnote to the kids. I'm going to throw in a few extras now. This is like just a little few extras I think I might have forgot. But biggest crowd I think I ever played in front of was about 15,000 people or so up at I guess, what was it called, the Field House or something up in Edmonton with 10 Years After concert. I've explained about that concert. Biggest piano I ever played was a big Steinway in Vernon. It's like a 9-foot Steinway, where they hired me at the Winter Carnival. I went up there, and this one I had Holiday in Hollywood out in it. I did a show up there. And I don't remember if I told you about playing at the Generator nightclub up in Prince George. It was a nightclub upstairs and a strip club downstairs. I remember some of the guys went rafting. I remember some of us took LSD the next day, and some of them went rafting, and I ended up at some groupie's house. I can't remember. And then one time I played up I played the Yellowhead Inn up in Prince George, and my cousins came over, Auntie Mary's daughters, and they came over to see me a few times, and then I remember their father had been killed up there by the railroad tracks. I think he was a drinker. Somebody murdered him. I was starting to ask around about it, and I think I ended up at a biker's bar where the bikers drank, and somebody said, "You better shut up about asking stuff like that." So I did shut up after that. And another little thing is the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life, I think, was when getting hit in the face with somebody. I was walking to the door when I was at the gym in Sycamore. Someone threw a basketball, and it hit the door right in front of my face and smacked me right in the face and knocked me out. Anyway, and then let's see. I guess that's about it for now. I'm going to do one little more section here. Hang on here. Nowadays, I'm mostly playing. I take art lessons from Tony O'Regan. He's a really good friend of mine. So nowadays, I'm mostly playing dances sometimes. I play. I'm the BC Hot Rod Association made me their musical director, and also I play for different car clubs in the summer. I play all the car shows. They're a lot of fun because I know every hot rod song there is pretty well. And sometimes I play like the care homes now, like everybody else is doing. You just play for an hour, play the old honky-tonk piano and all that stuff. And anyway, I guess that's pretty near wrapping it up. I've got one kind of more of a chapter to go, but I just want to mention one thing more about my friend West, who was David Alexander Brown. He was Rumpelstiltskin when we first met him. Then he was entire West Coast. Then he was Hayseed for a while. And then he was Aloha Dave. He ended up in Whistler and driving cab up there. And he always had big dreams, that guy. He was a wonderful guy. I really loved him as a friend, you know. He ended up dying in an apartment downtown and was in there for a whole week. They said it stunk so bad, poor guy. But anyway, I'd lost touch with him for about a year. But he was up at Whistler driving cab like limo all the time. And but that guy, in my opinion, was so smart and talented. I recorded 2 of his songs, California Drag Strippin' Baby and The Waves, that I've got on YouTube. But he wrote Teleportation, Going Back to the Mountains, that was his original title, and called Going Back to Montana. I remember the first time he ever played that, I thought, gee, that's like magic, that song. And he wrote The Leisure Generation, which was way ahead of its time, about a guy sitting at a big computer and computing all this stuff. And Teleportation was like, I live in West Vancouver, record down in L.A. I don't fly no commuter jet, that's from another day. Since I learned teleportation, traveling's a snap. I go from West Vancouver to L.A. like that. That's one of his songs. It's part of it anyway. Okay, I'm going to cut this off now. That's just like a little tying up a few loose ends. I forgot to say, when we were kids too in Nelson, we used to play Pony Express, where we'd pretend we had, I don't know if we had brooms, but we'd give someone a little thing and they'd have to go down the road and give it to the next guy and, cut through the bush and do all that stuff. And the hotel where I saw Chief Dan George downtown watching the strippers was the Castle Hotel. Used to be on Granville. There was another thing. Northwest Company was on another TV show called Where It's At. That's on YouTube too. And another thing I forgot to tell you is learning how to steal. When I was a kid in Sycamoose, a guy taught me. I was never a thief. I didn't like doing stuff like that. But this guy went into a store and stole some lifesavers, and then he took me and he said, "You do it like this." I think I stole 1 pack of lifesavers once, but I remember this salesman came to Sycamoose one time, and he when my eyes went bad in Sycamoose, a guy gave me one little lens, the optometrist. He felt so sorry for me, and because I used to have to squint in school, and I had this one little lens like I could put up to my eyes so I could see the board. That's probably why some of my marks were bad. My parents were too poor to afford stuff like that, you know. And you know, so anyway, this guy had come to the Gem Cafe, and he had this briefcase, and he had these big rubber bands, and I thought, oh God, those things, those would be really good for a slingshot. So when he went into the back room or something, I kind of stuck them in my pocket, and I took them out and buried them somewhere in the woods. I was going to go get him, and then I remember him coming back looking for the rubber bands. I thought, oh. But anyway, I was never a thief, so... Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this whole thing. It's a long thing I just did, but I got a couple more things to do, so that's it for that. Anyway, that's the sort of the story of my life in a bunch of different stories, and, you know, I've been a rock star all my life, sort of, and so I've had many experiences and, you know, been with lots of different girls, I guess, throughout my life. The ones that I ended up with are the special ones, of course, and I already went through that. I was married twice, and I've always tried to be honest with people and, you know, believe in God and trying to be a good person mostly. And I've always tried to be nice to people, and I've always protected people that I thought other people were being mean to. And so I hope you enjoy some of the stories, and probably some of it will turn you off or whatever, but, you know, that's the way it goes. Life is life, and everybody goes through different experiences. I didn't want to leave things out. I just tried to put down everything the best I could. So take it or leave it. There you go. The Life of Richard Stepp.